and ask for everyone to have a moment of silence. Thank you. JP, would you like to announce the proceedings, the process for the meeting tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Council. As we do with our electronic meetings, I'd like to start with a roll call, please. Councillor Watton, are you present today?
I am, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McDougall.
Present.
Councillor Guido.
Present.
Councillor Ross.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Kieserbrink.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I can confirm that we do have a quorum for this meeting. And I'm just going to go through and announce the staff members in attendance today also. And I'm just going to say their name today. Adam DeBecke, and this is in alphabetical order. Adam DeBecke, Kevin Heritage, Mark Burney, Paula Law, Robin Prentice are our staff, and myself are in attendance at this meeting today. Again, I would like to ask everyone to please mute your mic when you're not talking. This will avoid any background noise that may occur where you are and will avoid any echo in the audio. Please use headphones if they are available to you. That will improve our sound quality. If you'd like to speak during this meeting, please post a message in chat. The Mayor has access to the Teams chat and she will call upon you when it is your turn to speak. If council members, if you happen to leave your computer at any time, please let the Mayor know so that we can ensure that quorum continues to be met. When moving or seconding a motion, if you could please announce your name. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel. We will be using an electronic voting process during tonight's meeting. At the appropriate times, they will announce that the voting is open and council members will be asked to make a selection. Once everyone has voted, I will announce that the voting is closed. If for any reason a council member is unable to vote, please announce your vote verbally and say in favour or against. If the electronic voting system stops working for any reason, we will revert back to the Mayor asking each council member for their vote. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes my opening statement. Madam Mayor, that concludes my statement.
Sorry, I had my my microphone off, as I should have. Before the public session tonight, council met in closed session. We discussed a review of personnel recruitment materials, and we also discussed a property issue. And I'm looking for a mover, please, that the parcel of land described as the easterly part of lot 111 as it fronts on Water Street be declared surplus to the township's needs, and that the clerk be authorized to proceed with the process for disposing of the land by directing the township solicitor to prepare all the required legal documentation to effect the conveyance and to register the bylaw and any other such relevant processes as may be required. Mr. Clerk, did you wish to say anything more about that, or shall we just go to the vote?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that is pretty clear.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a mover, please?
Councillor Kieserbrink.
Councillor Kieserbrink and Councillor Brown. Mr. Clerk, will you open the voting, please? Oh, before we go that, are there any, no more discussion? We had all the discussion in closed session, so sorry, go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Seeing everyone has voted, I'm closing the vote now.
Thank you. I don't see the vote, Mr. Clerk. Has it passed?
Yeah, the vote has carried 6-0.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on now to item number 7. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof on the public agenda tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Brown.
Yes, and what is your?
2 items, 13.1 Port Perry Business Improvement Area Board and 13.2 Scugog Chamber of Commerce. I have a stepson who works for Marwan, and so I'm declaring pecuniary on both of those.
Thank you very much. Any others?
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Councillor McDougall.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on 11.1 and 12.2, which is the comfort and suites. I would have declared my pecuniary interest earlier at a public meeting, but there was no public meeting on this matter previously.
Okay, and the nature thereof?
Property next door,
Okay, on both.
7A.
Okay, and the waterfront action plan, did you have 12.2 as well?
No, sorry, just 12.1, I believe it is, and
12.1, sorry.
11.1. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others?
Madam Mayor, it's Director Newman, if I could ask Councillor McDougall to please enter those pecuniary interests so that when we get to the vote, his name will not appear, if I may.
Okay, would you please do that, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and do that now. Thank you.
And Councillor Brown, you've done that, have you?
I can confirm, Madam Mayor, that Councillor Brown has done it. I can see it on my side.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Announcements from council. Seeing none. Mr. CAO, Mr. Allure, you've got an announcement, I believe?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could, I'd like to provide a COVID-19 state of emergency update. Firstly, the declaration of provincial emergency has been extended to June the 30th. As well, the provincial emergency orders, all of them, have been extended to June 30th additionally. And I have a couple of good news announcements. As council knows, 2 of the Port Perry tennis courts were opened last week. The center court is being closed to provide physical distance between games, and the courts are available for casual play by the public. Organized league play is not permitted at this time. Additionally, on the spray pad at Palmer Park opened for public use on Friday, June the 19th, and just in time for the hot weather we experienced on the weekend. Signage has been erected to remind the public to maintain physical distancing and also to limit the maximum occupancy load to 10 people. Also wanted to advise council that staff are working on a stage 2 recreation and culture reopening plan. Staff are meeting this week to finalize the plan, and we will be reporting to council on the June 28th council meeting. And we'll be providing timing to open the outdoor pool and museum. Also be talking about the provision of a modified summer camp program and the permitting sports fields for team training. Also, we're working on a target date for reopening the municipal office. Be able to talk to you about that at the next council meeting. And along with that, a phasing plan for staff's return to work at the municipal office and recreational complex. As you probably heard today, the province moved Toronto and Peel to stage 2 to commence on Wednesday, June the 24th. That leaves just Windsor Essex as the final region, still in stage 1. And if I could, Madam Mayor, just a friendly request as an added measure of precaution for people when they are shopping in Port Perry and surrounding area in Scugog, to please wear a mask when you're visiting an indoor store, just for that added level of security and safety. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is my announcement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lohr. And yeah, I'd like to echo, for safety's sake, please wear a mask anywhere on Queen Street. You know, it gets a little crowded and can't always stay 6 feet apart. So when you're on Queen Street, when you're going in the shops, please wear a mask for your own safety and for everybody else's safety. So thank you very much, Paul. And thank you to staff for being on top of things. I know that we had a tentative plan for reopening, and always has to be adjusted according to the new rules that come out. but staff has worked very hard to accommodate those guidelines and the rules that have been put in place, and try to get things open as soon as possible, but doing it safely. So thank you to all of staff for that. And Director Heritage, I believe that you wanted to make an announcement.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got two items for committee's information. As Mr. Allord indicated, the region of Durham is under stage 2 of the provincial emergency order. Restaurant patios may open subject to requirements, but no dining is permitted in the restaurant. To date, the township has issued 4 conditional permits for the expansion of patios on privately owned land. And those 4 permits include the Foundry, the Pub, Jesters, and Horn Dogs. Now, once the emergency order is lifted and dining is permitted within those restaurants, the temporary patios must be removed. That's the first item, Madam Mayor. The second item is dealing with bylaw enforcement staff. They have been patrolling over the last number of weekends on Saturdays and Sundays. Over this past weekend on Saturday, there was the demonstration, and everybody there was certainly respectful, and the physical distancing was adhered to. Along with the demonstration, bylaw staff patrolled the Tim's and Wendy's parking lot. There were no issues there. They also visited the boat launches, both at Caesarea and in Port Perry, and there were no issues with those as well. On Sunday, the park along the waterfront was a little more crowded. However, everybody was still respectful, and physical distancing was adhered to. There were there was certainly a lot of people up at the Caesarea boat launch, and some were parking in the no parking areas, so some tickets were issued. Similarly, down in the Port Perry boat launch, it was crowded, but people were certainly respecting social distancing requirements, and some were issued tickets for parking infractions. That concludes my my summary, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Director Heritage, and our thanks go to our bylaw officers as well as the police for their diligence in checking out our public spaces to make sure that everybody is adhering to the guidelines and the rules. And I'm very pleased that that our residents and our visitors are adhering to those rules. So, well done. Thank you very much. Any other staff members have announcements? Seeing none.
Madam Mayor, just had an announcement.
Oh, Councillor Kieserbrink? Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heart to Jar is going to be doing drone filming on Wednesday, June 24th at 11 a.m. And it's for our Canada Day pre-show. So this drone footage, they're going to fly the drone past. We're wanting to encourage everyone to dress in red and white if you are downtown during that time. You can decorate storefronts, and it's a part of our celebrating Canada Day virtually this year. So we just wanted to make sure people knew that the drone was going by and you could be a part of that.
Okay, date and time again, please, and location.
So it's Wednesday, June 24th at 11 o'clock, and it's right on Queen Street.
Okay, thank you very much. So everybody take note of that and wear your red and white. Thank you, Councillor Kieserbrink. Any other announcements? Seeing none, public meetings, no presentations and delegations. We did have a late delegation request, and so just get that up here. I would be looking for a motion, please, that Herbert Schillings be permitted to address council as a delegate with respect to items 11.1 and 12.1 site plan application SP/07/2019 proposed Comfort Inn 1430 King Street in accordance with section 7.19G of the procedure bylaw. In order for us to receive this delegation, we would have to have a 2/3 majority. So questions on that? May I have a mover?
Madam Mayor, Councillor McDougall,
Yes.
I will not be able to vote on this.
Yes, I have noted your declaration of interest. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clerk, would you please open the voting?
Madam Mayor, if we could just get a mover and seconder, please.
I'm sorry. Yes, could we have a mover on that, please? Mover?
I'll move it, Councillor Watton.
Thank you. Seconder?
Councillor Ross, second.
Councillor Ross, thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you open the voting, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor. Closing the vote now.
Thank you. Do we have a 2/3 majority?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to sorry.
Madam Mayor, just for the record, it came up on my screen to vote and I clicked abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move to 11.1 and I'll call on.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. And just for your information, I'm just going to let Mr. Schillings in right now to the meeting. Okay.
Oh, fine. He can observe the presentation by Director Heritage. Thank you very much. Director Heritage, would you like to make your presentation, please, on the proposed Comfort Inn on King Street in Scugog?
And Madam Mayor, I apologize for interrupting, but
that's okay.
Mr. Schillings, just for your information, I assume you can hear me now. Council did vote to approve your delegation. You're going to hear Kevin Heritage, Director of Development Services, gives his presentation now, and then you'll be after him, as I described to you earlier. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to let Mr. Schillings know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Director Heritage, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Clerk is putting my presentation up on the screen, I think.
Mr. Heritage, you should have control.
There we go. Whoa. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the committee. What I'll do is just give a brief presentation on the site plan application for the proposed Comfort Inn. The site's located on the south side of Highway 7A, north of King Street, where there are currently 9 holes of the 27 holes of the Sunnybrae Golf Course. The lot area comprises approximately 28.6 hectares or 70 acres, and the entire lot is outlined in red on the slide, with 330 meters or 1,080 feet of frontage along Highway 7A. So Highway 7A is in this location, King Street is to the south. The balance of the Sunnybrae Golf Club is south of King Street. The surrounding land uses include agricultural, rural residential, and a garden center located on the north side of Highway 7A, which is located here. Oh boy. No, it's not over yet. How do I get that back, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, just give me one sec, Mr. Heritage. Try now, Mr. Heritage.
No, it's not working. Why don't you move it forward, Mr. Clerk? There we go.
I can do that for you, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, right. That's going to be easier. Okay, the hotel proposal is located on the northwestern portion of the property and comprises an area of approximately 1.5 acres. It's identified in orange. That's the proposed hotel location site. The hotel is proposed to be on private services that requires an advanced tertiary treatment sewage system with subsurface disposal fields. To maximize nitrate dilution, the septic tile feeds are located in the southwest corner of the property. A drilled well will be located in the northwest corner of the site, and an MECP permit to take water approval is required. Next slide, please. The proposed site plan includes a 4-story, 72-suite hotel with vehicular access from Highway 7A. Highway 7A is on the top portion of the slide. The access to the site is towards the east, and MTO will require a right-hand taper lane to get into the site. What's proposed within the building, in addition to the 72 suites, is a small swimming pool and a self-serve breakfast area. The proposal can be constructed such that there will be no significant change to the golf course layout and just a minor adjustment to the 3rd hole, which is immediately to the south. Next slide, please. The proposed elevation drawings include the top elevation is looking southward at the front of the building. It's a 4-story, as I indicated, hotel with a parapet over the main lobby. And the 2 other elevations are from the northwest looking southeast and from the east. Next slide. Now, the planning policy analysis, staff looked at a number of planning policies and documents that regulate development on this site. We reviewed the PPS, the provincial policy statement, which promotes recreational tourism and other economic opportunities. The Greenbelt plan. There are no new municipal services required to be extended into the Greenbelt, and the proposal does not expand into any key natural heritage features or key hydrologic features or their associated vegetation protection zones. The Durham Regional Official Plan designates the land's prime agricultural areas with a special exception to permit a 9-hole golf course. The Scugog Official Plan designates the property agricultural, natural core, and natural linkage. The proposal complies with a number of development criteria, including traffic impacts and the integration with surrounding land uses. Zoning bylaw 1414 zones the subject property RE, recreational, which permits a golf course and a tourist resort establishment, in which a hotel is a permitted use under a tourist resort establishment. Now, recently, the applicants had applied for a minor variance. On May 26th, the Committee of Adjustment approved a minor variance application to increase the permitted maximum building height from 12 meters to 13.2 meters measured to the roof surface and to 15.9 meters to the top of the parapet. No appeals were filed, therefore the decision has become final and binding. It is planning staff's opinion that the proposal conforms with the planning documents that I've described. Next slide, please. In terms of public and agency consultation, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting earlier this year. We have received 2 sets of comments, one from Wayne Hancock and one from White Feather Farms. Those comments are attached to the staff report, and staff's responses to each of the issues is addressed in those attachments. Now, notice of the application was posted on the township's website, and currently the second site plan submission has been circulated for agency comment. We've already received comments on the first submission, and the applicant has revised their submission as a second submission, and that's gone out for comment. Next slide. So in conclusion, Madam Mayor and Committee, the subject application is being recommended to be approved in principle, and that staff be authorized to issue final approval subject to conditions once the process is finalized, and authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan agreement on behalf of the township. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes my presentation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Heritage. you got in the second recommendation there, the staff be authorized to issue final approval. That is basically just crossing the T's and dotting the I's in addition to what we have here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown, you have a question?
Yes, I have a few. I'll try to be as brief as I can. Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Heritage. I just want to reinforce in 2.1.3 that the existing zoning does permit a golf course and a tourist resort establishment, which for the purposes of this is a hotel, right?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
in the RE recreational zone, which applies to this property.
Okay, is there the chance that we're going to see other businesses pop up relating to having a hotel nearby? Can you speak to that?
Well, the only other businesses that would be permitted would be in the RE recreational zone, and nothing else really is appropriate adjacent to a hotel in this area.
Has anyone else applied for something similar, Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, in terms of a hotel, no.
Okay,
This
and
is
one
the only
final.
hotel.
Thank you. And one final question through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Okay.
Given the approvals, when is the soonest then that we could see the shovels in the ground, and then how long after that are we looking at a hotel up?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the earliest I could see any shovels in the ground would be late fall, more likely probably early spring of 2021, and I would anticipate that full construction, including the shell and all the internal workings of the hotel, it would probably take approximately a year to complete, and the doors would be open at that time.
So 2022 then?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
I guess depending on when they wish to start.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. I'd indicated either later in the fall or early in the spring of next year.
Thank you. Councillor Kieserbrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just turning on my microphone. So in Mr. Hancock's comments to Director Heritage, he's talking about phosphorus. He'd like to see the phosphorus reduced by 100%. However, any private tertiary treatment of its own sewage within the subsurface disposal fields, as identified in your report, that comes through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. It's their regulations and their administration for any design flows greater than 10,000 liters. So that decision making regarding phosphorus would not be up to us. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's correct. It's a provincial requirement that's from the MOECP, from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Well, thank you. And if I could, Madam Mayor, further, there was expression of concern regarding water, but similarly, the MECP is responsible for permits for water. So just a question, has the applicant already gotten their permit for the water, or is there a step along the way that the permit is applied for? And if for some reason their permit wasn't approved, again, because it's not our jurisdiction but theirs, would that mean that this application would then just stop?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the MECP would have to approve any water taking permit. My understanding is that permit has not been issued as of yet.
So basically, if for some reason, I can't imagine that this would be the case, but if for some reason there was any issues with water, that would be out of our hands. It would just mean that the application would just then not proceed?
That's correct.
Yeah. To White Feather Farms concerns regarding the hotel impacting their ability to put up a new cattle barn, minimum distance separation isn't required because this property is already zoned tourism resort. Is that a correct understanding?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it's in reference to, I think you're referring to an additional chicken barn on the Schillings property, and MDS 1 does not apply to the hotel. This property is already zoned to permit a hotel.
Thank you. I'm just satisfied that this application is already deemed complete December 11th, and the public have been consulted, the concerns have been addressed. So thank you, Director Heritage, for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kieserbrink. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Kieserbrink asked a few of my questions already, but if I may, Director Heritage, in your report, it speaks to landscape plans have been submitted. Have those plans been circulated to council at all?
My understanding is, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, my understanding is that no, they haven't been circulated to council.
Okay, and will we see the final landscape plans at all?
I could certainly provide them to you.
Okay, thank you. And is the intention for any type of screening of the site for the neighboring properties, or is the landscape plan simply that landscaping of the actual area to beautify it?
My understanding is, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, my understanding is that it's simply being done to beautify the property and make it fit and be compatible with the surrounding land uses as well.
So making it compatible to the surrounding land uses, may that factor in any type of potential screening to the adjacent land uses, or would it just be to ensure that it has the same looks and feel?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, there should be some screening associated with, like, screening from the parking lot with the adjacent residential development.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. So could I
Sorry,
have
Madam Mayor?
Yes, is that Councillor Kieserbrink?
Yes, my apologies. Just a comment. I neglected to mention this, but the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks on June 18th and for the next 45 days until August 2nd are inviting public, Indigenous partners, municipalities, industries, and stakeholders to provide comments because they're making regular changes for managing water. So if people want to provide any comments with respect to water permits, they can certainly do that directly with the ministry right now. So that's just an aside.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Ross has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Heritage, this is in regards to the MTO portion found on page 10 of 14. Sorry, page 12 of 58. One of the two.
Both.
Under the Ministry of Transportation, point 2 says the parking facility for the hotel cannot be used for golf course events. Does the hotel have a conference room or anything that, if used, would be deemed, to be in violation of this? And the second question is in regards to number 4 of the Ministry of Transportation, where it says that this includes the option to close the highway entrance and relocate it to a municipal road. What municipal road would they be talking about there?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the municipal road, as I indicated in my presentation, this site abuts 2 roads. It abuts to the north, Highway 7A, which is controlled by the MTO, and then King Street to the south, which is a municipal road. So initially, when this application was circulated to MTO, MTO's preference was for access only from King Street. But through discussions with MTO, they have agreed that access would be appropriate from Highway 7A. So that's why condition number 4 has been included under MTO. If it becomes a safety issue or an operational issue on Highway 7A, they would look towards King Street as the access for this site.
Okay, further, Councillor Ross, to the presentation?
Yeah, if I could. And then in regards to the fact that the hotel cannot have golf course events, how is that monitored? How stringent is that if, like I said, a conference room or something is rented out by the golf course or somebody else?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The parking that has been allocated for the hotel is solely for the hotel. It's not to serve the golf course. Any parking associated with the golf course would have to be located further south, on either the immediate north side of King Street, where it's located now, or on the south side of King Street in conjunction with the clubhouse. The intent of MTO's request here is to ensure that appropriate safety is maintained for that access on Highway 7A.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Director Heritage. Could I have a motion, please, to receive the delegation?
I'll make that motion, Director Kiesebrink.
Okay, Councillor. Seconder, please.
Director Brown?
Okay. Okay, Mr. Clerk, can you open the voting to receive the report?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Seeing that everyone has voted, I'm going to close the vote now. And Madam Mayor, it was carried 5-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now I'll call on Mr. Schillings. You have 5 minutes. If you, when you're ready, please go ahead. And welcome.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's good evening, Council and Mayor. It's Hubert Schillings calling. We're not against the hotel. We got to make sure my farm has the right to expand. And the reason for that is half of our land is in the green belt. Half of our land is in the urban boundary. The land that is in the urban boundary has no sewage dedicated to it. So our land in the next 10 to 15 years has minimum potential to get out of agriculture. Meanwhile, the land that the golf course sits on today, around 2000, was zoned exactly the same as ours. I do not believe in 2000 MDS was applied. And now we're going to exempt the golf course hotel from doing MDS, minimum distance separation. But you expect me, the farmer who wants to expand, and I'm going to be fair even to the lamb farm on the other side of the golf course, the same situation. So we've asked, can I build a 20,000 square foot barn? Number 5. Meanwhile, you put the town in, I'm going to say, late 90s, changed the urban boundary, and we weren't opposed to it, but we didn't know a green belt was coming either, 10 years later. So that's the dilemma that we sit in. It's our only farm in Scugog that we own with natural gas. So that's a big plus for us. Natural gas is not on many farms in Scugog. And we're still producing chicken on that farm. And that farm's been almost 100 years in poultry production. So it's nothing new. And we've owned it well over 40 years, my family. So we like to have the option to expand. We are reasonably full right now. And I've told Mr. Heritage by 22, we need to build another barn. And that's really where we stand on it.
Is that the end of your delegation, Mr. Schillings?
Yeah, but the bottom line is the town expects me to do MDS for the 5th barn. And the golf course is exempt. But I don't believe in 2000, that's kind of when that land got rezoned prior to the Greenbelt, just to be fair, MDS was ever done. So I don't know where the exemption of MDS, you're allowing the golf course to expand with a hotel and no MDS. Hubert wants to expand and I got to do it. Where's the equality? Either we all follow MDS or nobody follows it. The farmers shouldn't have to follow it. The non-farmers shouldn't have to follow it. And there is exemptions you're allowed to have as a township through a committee of adjustment. I've gone to a committee of adjustment about 15 years ago to put a drive shed up, and the town turned me down. So I know what it means to go through a committee of adjustment. And I went to the OMB, and the town didn't even defend their thing. And the shed I did build on that farm. So this is not the first time we've gotten in trouble with the town. So this is where we come from. We've had a dirt pile for 10 plus years against our property line. The town does nothing about it. So we've had our struggles with the town on this farm. Either you support agriculture or you don't. There's no in between on this. There's my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Shillings. I see that in our report here that you brought up the same comments during that public comment period. And you got an answer that guideline number 11 of MDS document publication 853 would apply to reconstruction of existing barns. So are you talking about replacing an existing barn or building a new one?
Well, what you are right what you said. If I lost the barn, I do have the right to replace.
Yes.
But I'm talking about expanding now. So let's say 20,000 more square feet than exist. Each barn is about 20,000 square feet that I have to pay if I want to do one more barn.
Okay, thank you. Director Heritage, can you answer that question? I think you did during your presentation, but perhaps you could reiterate that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If Mr. Shillings wants to proceed with an application, building permit application for a new barn, in conjunction with the building permit application, he would have to submit his MDS calculations to demonstrate that it will not have an impact on the surrounding land uses. In terms of MDS calculations and the requirements that have to be abided by, we had asked for those MDS calculations for the hotel. And through the review of that submission, there was no MDS required. However, we had asked the same consultant, what impacts would there be if Mr. Shillings wished to add an additional barn to his farm of approximately 20,000 square feet. And the biggest issue that he would have to deal with would be the existing urban boundary and the residential development being so close to his farm. The existing golf course, even without the proposed hotel, also significantly restricts the potential for expansion of the farm operation, as well as the 4 contiguous residential lots to the north of the Shillings farm. So there are a number of issues that need to be dealt with in terms of constraints on any potential expansion on Mr. Shillings' farm.
Okay, thank you, Director. Are there any questions from Council to the delegate?
Madam Mayor, if I could, just a comment.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. To Director Heritage, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs are the ones that set the minimum distance separation formulae. And we as a Scugog Township or Council, we don't have the jurisdiction to decide who does MDS and who does not. Is that correct?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's correct.
Thank you.
In addition to the MDS guidelines that OMAFR has produced, we do have a section in our zoning bylaw that any development must comply with MDS 1 and MDS 2. So it's reinforced in our zoning bylaw.
So I just would like to express to Mr. Schillings that we greatly respect and appreciate the heritage and the farming legacy that your farm represents, and all of the assets of your farm. And I think this situation is one of those challenging ones where we fall sort of in between approving something where the authority of that approval comes from over our heads. It comes from the MDS. So I think that's one of the challenges with comparing your farm and the requirements of your barn versus the legislation around this hotel. I'll just make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Are there any questions to the delegation? We will be dealing with the report in just a moment, but are there any questions to the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Schillings, for your delegation and making your thoughts known to us. And I see that you also took advantage of making comments at the public meetings and so on. So thank you very much, and we will now turn to the report. And Council, if you would go to page 3.
Madam Mayor, if we could just get a motion to receive.
Oh, to receive, yes.
Please.
Could I have a motion to receive the delegation?
I'd like to make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Do I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Ross, second.
Councillor Ross, thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, will you open the voting, please?
Voting's open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Seeing that everyone has voted, I'm now closing the vote. And that was carried 5-0 with Councillor McDougall again not voting. I should have mentioned that for the last vote also.
Thank you very much. And we will now turn to the report, and it is on page 3. Could I have a mover of the recommendation? And for those that are listening, that's the report DEV 2020-021 entitled Site Plan Application SP 07-2019 GHD Limited on behalf of North King Street Port Perry Limited Partnership, proposed Comfort Inn, 1430 King Street, part of Lot 15, Concession 5, Ward 1. Recommendation report be received, and that the site plan application SP 07-2019 submitted by GHD Limited on behalf of North King Street Port Perry Limited Partnership, proposed Comfort Inn, be approved in principle, and that the Director of Development Services be delegated authority to issue final site plan approval, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the site plan agreement on behalf of the township. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kiesebrink, seconded.
Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown, thank you very much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the voting, please?
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Wharton.
Thank you. I think we've said it numerous times, but just to be very clear, there are other constraints that would affect Mr. Schillings from building the barn, whether the hotel was built or not. Is that correct, Director Heritage?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's correct.
And that was the urban boundary. And did you say there was, what was to the north?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, existing residential development to the north.
Okay. And if he were to build, and I'm sure this in any farmer's mind would not be a solution, but does the size of the barn impact the MDS?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, it does.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the vote, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Seeing everyone voted, I'm closing the vote now. And that was carried, Madam Mayor, 5-0 with Councillor McDougall again not voting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. And we will now move on to presentation number 11.2. And I'll call on Chief Mark Burney to bring forward a presentation on the 2019 Fire and Emergency Services Annual Report. Chief Burney.
Thank you, Mayor Drew. I'll just wait for it to come up here. While I'm waiting, I'd just like to say good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you. And it looks like I have control, so I'll ask that you bear with me. This is my first opportunity to present to all of you in this form, and I'll do my best not to challenge you with my presentation from my lack of technical savviness. Here we go.
We're still all learning, Chief Burney.
Thank you. The mouse click doesn't appear to be moving it. Mr. Clerk, would you rather me use a keypad?
Whichever one will work, Chief.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do it for you.
Sure. Yeah, it's not responding to me. Thank you very much. So within the 2019 annual report, that is required by bylaw for me to present to council. I've included some reports from our divisions, along with some emergency response statistics, an update on our master fire plan, as well as an update through our emergency management program, successes, and looking ahead. The programs that you'll see, I'll give a brief description of them, but I will list most of the programs that we do utilize in delivering and enhancing our fire safety programming throughout the community. Again, our goal is to enhance fire safety education and contribute to fire code compliance through enforcement. This year we did report 2019 we reported 424 reports to the Office of the Fire Marshal. Next slide, please, Mr. Clerk. Who we are? Well, I would be remiss to say that I'm sure you all know who we are as the township, but I think it's important to understand from our perspective how we look at things. The township of Scugog, Lake Scugog, and the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation lands cover 474 square kilometers and have a combined population of approximately 22,237 people. Within this area, we have over 8,110 dwellings. And that's a stat from StatsCan. I'm sure it's grown since then. Our building stock is still considered relatively older, with over 7,000 of these dwellings being built before the year 2000. There's still approximately 340 farm businesses farming 68,000 acres of land throughout Scugog. There's 1,134 kilometers of roads, and that's regional, municipal, and provincial roads. Conservation areas, 90 kilometers of Lake Scugog shoreline. And I got to tell you, I was quite surprised when I measured that one out. Again, there's light industry, and of course our neighbors from the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations, along with the Great Blue Heron Casino. Next slide, please. The FPPA, or the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, identifies municipal responsibilities. Every municipality shall establish a program in the municipality which must include public education with respect to fire safety and certain components of fire prevention, and provide such other fire protection services as it determines may be necessary in accordance with its needs and circumstances. On the recommendation of the 2017 Fire Master Plan, in March of 2019, Council received and adopted an appended Fire Department establishing and regulating bylaw, which among other things, established the powers of the fire chief, approved the fire department organizational statements that you see on the screen right now, goals, objectives, and a fire department organizational structure, along with core services to be provided by the fire department to the community. Also in the ENR bylaw, we identified approved the limited services definition, which for all intent purposes means a variation of services significantly differentiating from the norm as a result of extenuating circumstances such as environmental factors, obstructions, remote properties, private roadways, lanes, drives, and/or insufficient volunteer firefighters responding to the call to safely perform the necessary services required. And I'd like to stress that there's the potential in our community for all of these factors to contribute to or hinder in our delivery of services, just by nature of the community that we are. So again, as you can see, we have a vision. Our goal is to have a fire safe and resilient community. Fire safe, I believe you all know what that means. Resilient means able to bounce back. And we really put a lot of emphasis and effort into our vision. You can see our mission and our values. They're simple: family, duty, professionalism, honor, valor, and integrity. Next slide, please. Our strongest resource is our members. When approved staffing levels, emergency service personnel include up to 65 volunteer firefighters, 4 full-time members, along with 2 part-time administrative assistants, along with myself, the fire chief. What you see before you is our fire department organizational structure. By definition, the NFPA would describe Scugog Fire as a volunteer fire service having volunteer emergency service personnel comprising of 85% or greater of the department membership. By comparison, in the province of Ontario, there is approximately 194 volunteer fire departments, 32 full-time departments, and in those departments, and also 215 composite departments. Within those departments, there's 11,687 full-time firefighters, 18,800 volunteer fire departments or firefighters, and 507 part-time firefighters. We presently have a composition of 56 volunteer firefighters along with our 4 full-time members. Our community has responded to our calls for volunteer firefighters in the past, and we look forward to once again this year reaching out to the community to fill our openings within our department. Next slide, please. The Administration Division supports all divisions and firefighters with administrative matters related to their positions, including establishing department procedures designed to assist members with their roles, training, and establish safety measures for all firefighters. The first point of contact, as I'm sure all of you have seen when you come into the station, when you're allowed to come into the station, was for the public, or was our administrative assistants. These fine ladies respond to public inquiries, we request for open air burning permits, schedule our firefighters to attend our community events and group activities within the fire station. These ladies are professional and their efforts are very much appreciated by me and most of who come into contact with them. What I've highlighted here on this slide is some of the achievements of these ladies in this past year. Launching an address-based comprehensive records management program was huge. There's a lot of data that we had within our department on an old system, and believe it or not, still on pencil and paper. And being able to load that into this new program and being able to use it not only in the office but out in the field has been huge for our department. Aligning the department with the Ministry of Transportation requirements so that we can use vehicle registration IDs to recover costs of service. And I've been a firm believer in cost recovery, and I still am. And also expanding our cost recovery program, for instance, on municipal and regional roads is another great achievement of these ladies. Next slide, please. Annually, our fire prevention officer produces a simplified risk assessment. We use this simplified risk assessment to really look at what the risks are within the community. On a go-forward basis, there'll be an expectation, I'll talk a little bit further about that we no longer look at the simplified process, but in fact, we provide on a 5-year basis a risk assessment that will help you, council, in determining where we go with fire services. The fire prevention officer also establishes what our smoke alarm program will address and how. Determines our fire safety education material to be distributed, again, and how. And with the support of myself, staff, and the Office of the Fire Marshal, inspects occupancies upon complaint and request. That is the bare minimum of what we're required to have as a community fire safety program. Simplified risk assessment, a smoke alarm program, and the distribution of education material, along with inspections upon complaint and request. Next slide, please. We provide core educational, fire and life safety, public education and messaging to groups, organizations, families, and residents because what we believe the first line of defense is the key to resident and firefighter life safety. Focused fire safety education and prevention strategies using these programs, the programs you see on your screen, give us what we believe a fire safe and resilient community. Each one of these programs is very key to reaching out to all the demographics of our community. Even if you look at the junior fire chief program, that junior fire chief program challenged an age group through all the schools in Scugog to develop an escape plan and to identify the key fire safety features within their home. I have to tell you, in the few years that I've been the fire chief for you, and we've delivered this program, it is remarkable what our kids in the community are holding in with respect to fire safety. They are very smart individuals, and I look forward to them all growing and having homes and raising the bar when it comes to fire safety within our community. Next slide, please. This was a great opportunity, I have to tell you. Fire safety education isn't about what we do alone in fire services as much as it is what we do as a community. In this report, I'll speak further to some other programs, but here is a classic, Domino's Pizza, contributing to the fire safety. If during Fire Prevention Week, I believe it was a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday evening, if you ordered pizza and we escorted the delivery person and knocked on your door and confirmed that you had working smoke alarms and you could express an escape plan, your pizza was paid for by Domino's Pizza. It was fantastic, I have to tell you. As well this year, in 2019, Rona made a huge contribution to our fire and CO detection and alerting equipment stock that we've used in the community free of charge to ensure that everyone has a working smoke alarm, whether you can pay for it or you can. And it's been very much appreciated by myself and Christine, all of the staff, I have to tell you that. Next slide, please. In delivering our our public education programs, we at one time were handing you, the resident, a lot of information, probably too much information. Recently, we looked at our information and we turned our information into a more focused product. Our thoughts were simple. Let's focus our messaging. Let's ensure that our residents are strong on it. And once you're strong with our messaging, then we'll start to expand on it. As you can see, this focused messaging here is about smoke alarms and CO alarms. What we do when we're out talking and mingling with our residents is then we expand on fire escape planning. So we have a very keyed or focused message here, and I believe it's working quite well for us. Next slide, please. Another program that we initiated this year, a community outreach program. I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun here. We came to you, the resident. We took over conversations and frankly had some fun reiterating our key safety, fire safety and CO messaging. And as you can tell in this picture here, this group of ladies who are regulars at a couple of establishments, as we found out, thoroughly enjoyed and did quite well in our testing of fire safety. And you know, when you look at the risks, the elderly are a risk factor for us when it comes to fire safety. So it was really good to converse with them and learn where they are with their knowledge. And I believe even a couple times we had some door knocks as a result of this in helping this group here ensure that they were fire safe. Next slide, please. Our next step in ensuring that we're fire safe is enforcement. And as you can see, it is the second line of defense. Standards and code enforcement. We do it through a number of programs, beginning with our risk assessment, inspections, re-inspections. If after there is no compliance through re-inspections, we get into enforcement. And I want to speak to enforcement a little bit. When we enforce the fire code, there's a number of factors that we look at, and it's those factors I'll share with you, namely the existence of immediate threat to life situation due to fire, the length of time it'll take to reduce or eliminate the threat, availability, willingness, and resources of the owner, occupant, and/or tenant to take corrective action, the availability, willingness, and resources of the fire service to take corrective actions, history of non-compliance, and the number of persons at risk, vulnerability of occupants because of their cognitive or physical limitations, the ability of persons to evacuate in the event of emergency, i.e. the ability to egress, have egress routes, balconies, areas of refuge, etc. Preventable versus deliberate actions that may start a fire, endangerment of occupants and or first responders, negligent actions and non-actions of the owner or responsible parties, and blatant disregard for compliance for the fire code. And again, you know, that sounds like a lot. And if I was to look at an infraction, or a fire prevention officer was to look at an infraction, would we, go through those factors before we, perhaps lay charges or put an order? No, not necessarily. But I guess what I'm trying to reinforce is we work with our residents, our business owners, our property owners to ensure that fire code compliance is out there. And in fact, our public buildings, whether it be through institution or employment type buildings, are safe for everybody. I'd just like to note too that we have 6 vulnerable occupancies within the township of Scugog, and annually they must demonstrate their ability to evacuate the building, as well as have an internal inspection done by fire prevention staff. Next slide, please. Emergency response. Scugog Fire and Emergency Services, by definition, as I said earlier, is considered a volunteer fire department. And as a result, we use NFPA 1720 as the standard to assess the operational performance of the department. And we do that in the following areas: organization and deployment of our suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and then special operations to the public by a volunteer department. I want to share with you that myself, along with our 2 volunteer district captains, our duty captain, and our training officer, meet on a regular basis to assess our proficiencies and limitations and to strategize how we'll enhance our delivery of the third line of defense across the community. Next slide, please. This chart illustrates the abilities of the department to respond to fire calls, and I stress fire calls only. In 2019, we had 34 fire calls. In the report, we'll look at other stats within the department and the department's ability to respond at different times of the week and of the day. This is one of the key factors in determining our perceived effectiveness. So as you can see here in Port Perry, they had a majority of the fire calls, 25 of them, and their average assembly time is 6 minutes and 49 seconds. On average, they have just under 5 persons on the first truck, and on average, they have 15.6 or just over 15 firefighters responding to the station. Consequently, in Caesarea, they had 9 fire calls in 2019. Their average assembly time is 5 minutes and 29 seconds, with just over 4 firefighters on that first out the door truck, and their average total response personnel is 20.9. I believe a couple things here. Their times, their average assembly times reflect the time of day when it comes to the call, as does their average total personnel. It reflects the time of day, as well as, and I believe I expressed this to you last year, Caesarea right now is sitting virtually full complement compared to Port Perry. And we hope to change that in the very near future, get Port Perry back up to a full complement. Next slide, please. In this slide, we are illustrating the type of fire calls responded to in 2019. And I know there's a lot of graphic there, but I'll try and explain exactly what it is. So first of all, the dotted blue circle, seemingly with the fire station, which is a red star in the middle, is the 8-kilometer radius from the Port Perry Fire Station. And that's significant when it comes to our tanker shuttle accreditation. It's 8 kilometers by road from the fire station, but I for the simplicity, use this 8-kilometer dotted circle. So as you can see, we had 12 structure fires. They are the red dots. 19 vehicle fires, they are the green dots. 3 other fires, they are the gray dots. And then outdoor no loss fires are grass fires or wildland fires, and they are represented by the blue dots. The red lining you see is really that it's what was prescribed as the station boundaries. And it's been ongoing for some time. I perhaps would suggest that before or with the amalgamation of the townships, forming the township of Scugog way back when, and the 2 stations becoming Scugog Fire. Next slide, please. This slide, another stat, is about our non-fire calls. In 2019, we responded to 373 non-fire calls. What you'll see in other stats as you've reviewed the report, is that there's a lot of consistency over the past 3 years in our different types of non-fire call responses, whether it be the burning complaints, the CO false calls, the medical calls, including the increase in rescue calls. The past 3 years, rescue calls, which are everything from calls out on the lake to MVAs with extrication to MVAs with fire prevention. They all fall under that category. And these are categories used by the Fire Marshal's Office, I might point out. So yes, rescue calls have been increasing over the last 3 years. And I can only presume because, well, we're an attractive community. There's a lot going on in Scugog and a lot going for Scugog, and as well as the casino. So next slide, please. Training. The training environment is, I would suggest, compliant with Section 25(2)(h) of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. I can tell you our training officer is very in tune with health and safety, and as am I, and we ensure that all of our forms of training are safe for our firefighters. In 2017, I presented to council the opportunity to have mandatory training, and you endorsed that. And I can tell you that in 2019 we had just under a 95% compliance to training. So what we do with those who are not in compliant, we try and work with them. And sometimes it could be because of their occupation, or their own personal health, or the health of family that has taken them away from the service. We work with them. We try to get them back on board. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out for them or for us, and we have to take more extreme measures. But I'm happy to say that, again, compliance is just under 95%, and I've not seen that in a long, long time, probably early in my career. I'm happy to say that 29 firefighters are due for NFPA testing, and I'll go over some more stats with you in a minute as to what that all means. Lots of training hours. I am so happy about that. I think that, again, is reflective of just under the 95% compliance. And also in 2019, 8 new recruits joined the team in Caesarea, again, taking their numbers up to near capacity. With respect to the NFPA testing, so right now, as it stands, 24 of our 44 firefighters are level 1 certified members. 20 of those 24 are level 2 certified members. And then when you look at our officers, we have 12. 10 of the 12 officers are level 1 certified. 6 of the 10 are level 2 certified. And then 2 of the 6 are level 3 certified. And I have to tell you that when these 29 firefighters perform their NFPA testing and certification, it's going to raise the bar for us when it comes to the level of knowledge and skill in our group, and I'm quite happy with that. I think we're ahead of the curve when it comes to a lot of departments, and I look forward to getting some more on that certified list, so to speak. Next slide, please. Asset management. Lieutenant Goris plays a big role here in maintaining our stations, our trucks, and our equipment. And one of our objectives is to have a maintenance program to ensure that all fire protection apparatus involving all equipment is ready to respond to emergency calls. And as I said, it's an objective of this division. Some of the enhancements that were realized in 2019 through Lieutenant Goris's efforts and council, thank you very much, council, was a radio system voice recorder. We replaced it, had a little help from Durham Regional Police, installed a commercial grade residential washing machine at Station 62. I have to tell you that that's gone a long way with our program to keep our fellows clean when they return. We also initiated our portable radio battery replacement program, upgraded our breathing air compressor, which works right along with council's endorsement of going to new BAs back a few years ago. So I'm quite comfortable we have the opportunity to provide a great level of protection for our firefighters when it comes to their breathing apparatus and fresh air. Installed a dishwasher at Station 61, installed liquid proportional dispensers in both stations so that we can, as the word would put it, proportion our product into pails versus just dumping what we feel is the appropriate amount for cleaning or otherwise. And then last year, with the picture you see there, we replaced our large rescue boat. There's some stats with that in 2019, but I can tell you in 2020 we've been out 5 times on the lake already with this vessel, and fortunately it was to bring people in that needed assistance versus recovering, and that I'm thankful for. And then the last point I'd like to make on the slide here is that in the 3 years since we've had this role, Lieutenant Goris has saved the township in excess of $50,000 in third-party costing, and that's very much appreciated. Next slide, please. Fire Master Plan. Fire Master Plan is a comprehensive evaluation of the fire service's current operations, staffing, and service delivery, an assessment of current services in relation to legislative standards and municipal best practices, and a strategic multi-year plan to deliver services based on the needs and circumstances of the community. The analysis within the Fire Master Plan recognizes 4 strategic priorities for the delivery of fire protection services by Scugog Fire and Emergency Services, including the recognition of the historical dedication and commitment of volunteer firefighters, and the implementation of strategies that sustain the utilization of volunteer firefighters, the utilization of a community risk profile in determining the level of existing and projected fire safety risks within the municipality as the basis for developing clear goals and objectives for all fire protection services to be provided, the optimization of the first 2 lines of defense to provide a comprehensive fire protection program within the township based on the results of the community risk profile, and emphasis on strategies that support the sustainability of fire protection services that provide the most cost-effective and efficient level of fire protection services, resulting in the best value to the community. To date, on the 2017 Fire Master Plan, where there was 42 recommendations, we still have, we have completed 26 recommendations, and we have 12 existing recommendations in administration to address. 11 in the training division, 11 in fire prevention and public education, 3 in the suppression division, and 4 in the apparatus equipment and stations recommendations. We'll continue to evaluate and action on the further items, and I have to tell you that not every recommendation is going to be a made in Scugog recommendation, but we'll look at the genesis of the recommendation and do what's best for our service and our community, and if there's a substantial change to the recommendation, then I'll be bringing it forward to council. Next slide, please. Emergency management. Well, I have to tell you, in 2019, we did quite well. We exercised our control group, and we were compliant with the province in all their expectations for having an emergency management program. This card here works with the card that you've seen earlier in the fire prevention. It's one of the 2 cards that we distribute to the community through community events and public displays and at the public counters. Again, this is about focused messaging and in our efforts to having that fire safe and resilient community. So again, this is very basic, but it's very focused. This is what we would encourage all of our residents to do when it comes to preparing for the emergency, and having ownership in their safety and well-being. Next slide, please. This is our financial slide. As you can see, what our expenditures were in 2019. I'd like to point out, though, you don't see it on the slide here, but it's in the report. Our revenues were down 53% last year compared to 2018, and this decline was as a result of reduced MTO cost recoveries and a reduction in illegal burning cost recovery. The latter, I would suggest, is a good thing, because illegal burning was down. I'd like to also suggest that our administration team has taken, again, steps to maximize cost recovery. As you know, I'm an advocate for that. Next slide, please. Some fun stuff, successes. Kelsey Bailey named our junior fire chief for 2019. I have to tell you, it was an exciting time for both me, her, and Christy. This young lady stepped to the forefront. For those who were at our recognition night, gave an awesome presentation to the crowd. Joined me in the Santa Claus parade and walked with myself and Sparky, and frankly was the head of her class, if I can call her that, when it came to knowing her fire safety and representing her age group with us as the junior fire chief. It was awesome. As well as, I'm not going to go through all of these, but there was a lot of great things that happened for us in 2019. Firefighters stepping up, becoming pump operators. The fire or the community members that joined our team in Caesarea, celebrating the years of service, 5, 10, and 20 years of service. I think we should point out that firefighter Dick Hoffman, Mike Martin, and Joe Goris all received their Canadian Exemplary Service medals. That was very exciting. Attracting Christy Lynn to the township of Scugog was a success. And something, Officer Gettins, our fire prevention officer, who retired after 30 years, as well as Don Boldick, who retired after 21 years of service. Great to see them out enjoying retirement from the fire service and enjoying their community and their leisure life. Let's flip a couple more slides, please. Let me do another one. 54 community events. That was the most events we've done in the 4 years I've been in Scugog. Again, we were successful with our emergency plan and the compliance with the 6 vulnerable occupancies. And achieving the tanker shuttle accreditation at Station 61. I have to tell you, a lot of hard work went into that from our members and our colleagues from Uxbridge in ensuring that we could accomplish this tanker shuttle accreditation. And we did well enough that as soon as we can identify and establish a site somewhere along the lakeshore in the Caesarea area to put a dry hydrant, will be grandfathered our tanker shuttle accreditation for the Caesarea area. And I quite look forward to that. It is going to be one of my objectives for the next budget season to perhaps provide to council an opportunity to make this happen, this dry hydrant happen in the Caesarea area. Be good for us in firefighting, and it'll be good for our residents when it comes to their insurance ratings. As well as the last thing I think I'll point out is council endorsing the new fire department establishing and regulating bylaw update, and I thank you very much for doing that. It was long overdue, and I believe we have a good product for the fire service to utilize in performing our roles and our duties for not only the community, but for you, Mayor Drew, and council. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, I am working very hard to find a third-party solution for fire dispatching services. By virtue of how we are or who we are when it comes to being alerted and then taking over the dispatch function, potentially I could be losing 2 firefighters that could be on the street, so to speak, with the team providing fire protection services. So if we can do something that's affordable and it improves our level of fire protection services, I'm going to be more than honored to present to council the opportunity. So we're working hard on that, and I'd ask you to stay tuned. We're going to expand our municipal emergency plan. To be honest, I hope to pass on any type of exercise in 2020, but in 2021, we are going to work with DEMO and I believe OPG in our neighboring communities to participate in a larger exercise, and we're going to expand on our emergency plan and ensure that we cross or we cover all of our risks and cross our T's and dot our I's, and I look forward to that work. I had mentioned earlier about the simplified risk assessment. When the 3 regulations came into the fire service in 2018, the one that survived with the change of government was the community risk assessment. And from that point, every municipality and fire service has 5 years to provide the community, and that is you, Mayor Drew and Council, with a community risk assessment, so that you can, along with the fire chief, make appropriate decisions for the community with relationship to fire protection services. So we'll be working hard on that in conjunction with our simplified risk assessment, so that we're prepared to present this to you in 2024. Again, we're going to be working hard on updating our fire department operating procedures. To date, we have been working off of directives and the old procedures that were in place previous to me. And so some of them are still valid, but we are going to take a hard look at all of our operating procedures now and move forward on adopting a full new complement of them that will ensure the department is providing an effective and efficient service delivery model, as well as providing for the safety of our firefighters and our residents alike. We'll continue to assess and action our fire master plan recommendations, as well as enhance our online access to information and permits. A lot of great work as a result of the municipal shutdown happened by the director of finance, and I got to tell you, it worked in our favor when it came to our open air burn permits. I've not seen permit numbers like we have this year to date, and I believe that is directly as a result of the director of finance's efforts to help us with online registration and what have you, and that's awesome. And then the last, one of the last bullets for looking ahead is ordering the new tanker for Station 62, and looking forward to having that in place for our men and women over there, and utilizing it for fire protection services. Next slide, please. And then lastly, with the continued support of council, and again, I thank you for all your support. We'll continue to strengthen the delivery of our fire protection services, including optimizing the first 2 lines of defense. I'm a firm believer. Public education, prevention, and code enforcement is the 2 lines of defense, or the 2 legs that we must stand on when it comes to providing sound fire safety and having a fire safe and resilient community. And then emphasis on strategies that support the sustainability of fire protection services, resulting in the best value for the community. And that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, and I will provide you with what it takes to make that happen. And then the last little picture there, again, it starts with our kids. And I have to tell you, it's been very energizing seeing the enthusiasm of our fire prevention officer and the attention she gets from the ladies at the local establishments, all the way down to our young people, and they're believing in her, and I truly believe that they will make fire safety a second nature to them as they grow old in our community. That, Mayor Drew, is the conclusion of my report, and I thank you for the opportunity to present it to you, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions of you or council.
Well, thank you very much, Chief. That was a pretty extensive overview of your 2019 report and very informative. So thank you very much. You did reference dry hydrants. Can you explain what the dry hydrant is?
Sure. I'd be more than happy to. I'll start with a pumper truck. So a pumper truck, and we have 3 of them, 2 in Port Perry and 1 in Caesarea, are designed to draft water from a static source. So I can put a hard suction hose over the edge of a pool and conceivably suck it dry. So let's take this now to a dry hydrant. A dry hydrant is, for all intent purposes, a pipe in a static water supply. That pipe has no pressure, but it provides the opportunity for a pumper truck to draft water into its pump and then turn that static water supply into a pressurized water supply. And we have many of these types of static water supply opportunities in the industrial area of Port Perry, and they preceded any type of hydrants that were in that area. Very, very common in rural areas of the province where large buildings, whether they be commercial or otherwise, are being installed, water reservoirs, what have you, put in. And what gets the water from out of the ground or from that static source is this dry pipe, a dry hydrant. So okay. It's a drafting point.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions on the presentation? We will deal with the report in just a moment, but are there any questions of the presentation for the chief? Director. Councillor, oh, we got a bunch here. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for that extensive report. 2 questions. First is in regards to the stats you outlined as far as the assembly time. Just correct me if I'm wrong. The assembly time is time that volunteer firefighter from the time they receive the call until the time they show up at the station. Is that right?
Correct. So from the time they receive the alert to the time the truck begins its response. Correct.
And do you have numbers as far as what the average time to the call scene is from the time the call is received?
I can produce those numbers. I did not in my report, no.
Okay. I know that in the police service that's how successful you are rated in many cases and how fast you can get to the scene. Is that the same way for the fire department, or is the assembly time the gold standard?
I would suggest the gold standard when it comes to assembly time is different. It's different for career departments versus volunteer departments, because there's a inherent respect that a volunteer is coming from wherever they are in the community, home, shopping, what have you, versus a career department would be looking at perhaps for a fire call 60 seconds, and for a medical call I believe it's 80 seconds to assemble to the truck and initiate the response. So from the gold standard perspective, it's very dependent on the type of department and where your staff are coming from.
Okay, great. So is there a time that you would be pushing for the actual time to scene in the area?
Well, that's there is a if you look in the report, there is documentation on that. I'm just bringing up my report now. Just bear with me for a minute, please. If you go to page 12 of my report, it's under the emergency response heading. You'll see the NFPA 1720 demand zone tables. Okay, so what we're looking at there is, it's the start of this whole time equation that you're referencing. So if you were to, let's just go to a rural area, 500 people per square mile, minimum number of firefighters is 6. The response time is 14. That response time is equivalent to their turnout and their travel time in minutes. Okay, and the performance objective, according to NFPA, is to achieve that 80% of the time. So if we were to plot all of our calls on a map and utilize software that gives us the road network, travel time, et cetera, against our own data, then we could, look at our performance measures according to 1720.
And so further through, Madam Mayor, are we getting to that performance objective of 80%? Is that happening?
No, I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it that in depthly, though I will suggest that a part of the risk assessment that I have to do for 2024 will be a part of that assessment. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Second question, if I may.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, you mentioned that you're actively recruiting again.
We will be, yes.
Okay, what is the attrition rate on both full-time and volunteer members for 2019, and how does it compare with the last 5 years?
I'd be guessing on giving you any type of statistic. From a full-time perspective, only Officer Gettins retired, so one out of four. And then from a volunteer perspective, again, I'd be guessing. I can provide that to you in an email if you'd like. But we have had a bit of a turnover. I mean, with change comes sometimes a dislike for it. It's not how we did business, et cetera, et cetera. And although I believe a majority of the change has been good for our department, there's some guys that were very stuck in the old ways and didn't want to make the change. And subsequently, they moved on, as well as what I said earlier, with council endorsing mandatory training, to which I firmly believe in. Some guys just couldn't, guys and gals just couldn't, maintain that requirement, and their life is busy, and that's okay. It really is. So we move on, and but I can provide that for you if you would like it.
Great, thank you very much, Chief. No other questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Was the pandemic the first time we exercised our new municipal control group? Just curious.
In my term as fire chief, yes. And I can tell you in my career, I've only activated a control group. I believe it was for the ice storms in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, congratulations to everyone. Everyone's been working really hard and a super job with that. And congratulations to Lieutenant Goris, our maintenance technician. Those 245 hours are greatly appreciated for all the fleet apparatus and equipment repairs. And then to all the pump operators accreditation, Corey, Ken, Chad, Zachary, Simon, good job to them. Can you clarify what achieving Station 61 tanker accreditation means?
Sure, I can. Don't quote me on it because I might be off a little bit, but I can tell you for a period of time, and I believe it was just over 2 hours, we had to pump consistently a level of water output that gave us a grading. So I believe we achieved 400 gallons a minute, and we sustained it for 2 hours. And that gave us a residential commercial rating. And again, I can requalify all this for you, but it gave us, I believe, a residential commercial grading for the rural area or for within 8 kilometers of the Port Perry Fire Station.
Excellent. And in Blackstock, there was just a terrible fire, and there was a number of residents who had questions about the hydrants. Could you just maybe give us a little quick update on that?
Sure. So, let's compare, apples to oranges. The hydrant system in Port Perry is supported by the wells on Simcoe Street South, as well as a large capacity tank. And it's the tank we all see from the lake and what have you. The Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations same thing. They've built a water system that is based on wells and a very, very large tank. The water system in Blackstock, again, is based on wells, so wells supplying a water tank. The water tank, however, though, is not close to being equivalent to that in Port Perry or on the island through the Mississaugas. And when it comes to exercising that reservoir of water and pump capacity, et cetera, it is quite suitable for, I believe, suitable for a residential fire throughout that hydrant area, where we may have and I would suggest we didn't have problems, but we worked with the region of Durham when we had that fire in Blackstock because of the water volumes required to extinguish the fire. The region of Durham is alerted when their water capacity starts to drop, and I don't know what their percentage is, but they were alerted. They came to the fire scene. They acknowledged through conversation with us that we're really pushing the limits of the water system. So we worked with them, so not to agitate the system, I'll say, and we brought in tanker support, our own fleet of tankers, as well as support from Clarington through our mutual aid program to extinguish that fire both through hydrant water and tanker shuttle.
Thank you. If further through you, Madam Mayor, one additional question. You mentioned on page 28 of your report that in looking ahead, there was going to be enhancing online access to information and permits for the public. How would you be achieving that? Well,
frankly, I'd like to, our webpage, I would really like to work with Lori Bowers and her team as well as our administrative staff to ensure that, all bits of information that promote fire safety and resilience throughout our community is there and available to our community and the public, along with any type of permit that is from the fire service, i.e. Open air burning permits. If I can save staff time and put staff into other tasks because they're not necessarily entertaining everybody that comes to the counter for again this year a record number of permits, then it's good efficiency.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor Ross asked a few of my questions, Chief, but if you wouldn't mind, you just touched on a record number of permits. Would you say that may be attributed to the fact that we now allow in-town burning? Correct.
I would suggest you're fairly accurate, and although I haven't analyzed it to see exactly where it all is, we have through our process gave fair warning to our residents as to where they should and shouldn't apply, and then what the conditions are for having a permit, amount of acres, stuff like that. So yeah.
Thank you. So then I suggest that my next question may not know the answer to then, and that would be how many in-town permits we were issued or have been issued since we have now allowed this.
I can get that for you if it's important to you. But
no,
you know what?
In all honesty, Chief, it's something that myself and several councillors advocated for. So I would just like to see if it was something that was definitely well received and went towards our financial success in your department. So it would be great to know that.
I can find that out for you and share it.
Perfect. Thank you. No further questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Guido. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to you, Chief. Thank you for the report. It's very comprehensive and informative. I found it interesting. I think it was the page that showed the stats that you had 2020 versus 15 arrive to go to fires.
Okay,
Caesarea being a smaller, is Caesarea normally a smaller complement, or because they are at capacity, you know, do they don't have more volunteers per se, do they?
Actually, they do right now.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the 8 new volunteers that came on board in Caesarea, that took their numbers to capacity and above Port Perry's. Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, yeah, our goal is to obviously equalize it and make sure we have. But I can tell you that that's a well-earned stat for the people, from the firefighters in Caesarea.
And you and they should be very proud of that. Just as you should be very proud of all the work you've done. And I just wanted to make one comment that kudos to all of the firefighters who have had to respond to what seems like a great deal of fires in a short time period in the last month or so. And please express, our sincere gratitude for all their efforts. I'm sure they are well beyond tired and don't even want to hear about another one, but we truly, truly do appreciate all the work they have done. And I would appreciate it if you would pass that on to them. Thank you.
Thank you. I will share that with them. I got to tell you that it's amazing how adrenaline gets moving in a firefighter.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor Watton?
No, I'll save my other one for after the chief's report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, I'd just like to echo Wilma's comment with regards to the dedication and hard work of our firefighters lately. I think all of us feel the same way. Thank you very, very much, Mark Burney, to all of them, to you, to everyone. It's certainly been busy.
Thank you. I'll share that.
Thank you. On to the permits. We've had lots of permits taken out lately, and I know I've heard expressed from some people that there might be nice to have an option to pay, and I don't know if this is the fire department or the finance department, but an option to pay online, Interact, or Visa some way for those permits. Is that something that would be assistive perhaps to your department? Is it in your wheelhouse, or would that fall back to the finance department?
Well, it would fall back to the finance department, but I'm going to encourage that we continue to advance that opportunity, not only for permits in my area, but across the municipality.
Okay, excellent, very good. And further, Madam Mayor, you discussed about assembly times, and it had kind of some average statistics. And a question that came to my mind is are the statistics that are, now I know we only have a certain number of fires at each station, and so it's kind of aggregated over time, but is there a difference between daytime statistics and evening statistics such that it would be notable, or is it kind of consistent?
Well, I think you're seeing it if you were to look at page 13 of my report, and we use the station 61 chart and the station 62 chart, that it speaks to, although it's about all calls, it speaks to time of day and days of the week. And we use that 06 to 1800 hour parameter for a couple of reasons. Monday to Friday, that's when we have staff at the station. And then, as we continue to grow our department and ensure that we have an equal complement of firefighters that work shifts and straight days, et cetera, I believe it speaks to where or how well we're doing in attracting residents to become volunteer firefighters with those two factors in mind.
Okay, very good.
I think it'd be prudent at some point to perhaps blow these types of stats out using our response headings and see what our performance is like, and but that will be for a rainy day when we got some time on our hands.
Further, Madam Mayor, would that be, so you mentioned a more comprehensive kind of study for 2025, is that correct?
2024, correct, yes. We are regulated to provide.
And would that be the sort of thing that, sorry, further, Madam Mayor, would that be the sort of stats that would be included in that study?
Yes, I can tell you I did a similar study in Clarington years and years ago. It wasn't under regulation though. It was just an opportunity to utilize a service or a document from the fire marshal's office, and we exercised it. And yes, it does get very comprehensive when it comes to the stats, and obviously you have to be you have to enjoy the analytics to really understand what it's saying to you, but it is informative. I look forward to writing it, to be honest.
Very good. One last question. You mentioned a departure from kind of old ways to new ways, and it sounds like to me, I'm not exactly sure, but I think is the change training such that all officers must respond to training XYZ for a certain number of hours, not optional whether they have the training elsewhere or not?
No, that's correct. And I got to be honest, base training when it comes to a firefighter in obtaining their certification, 100% believe in it. If you went to Durham College or to one of the other 23 colleges across the province, or obtain your certification through Scugog Fire, that base level of training I believe in, and I believe it's not unique, it's uniform. What becomes unique and requires our members to be a part of our training on a regular basis is the uniqueness of our department. And whether it be the characteristics of our community to our department and the different pieces of equipment. We'll just use an example. There's 4 or 5 BA types that are out there. There's 2 that are very, very popular. There's a great chance that a firefighter from another department uses Model X and we use Model Y. And I think it's important that they regularly train with our model and become proficient, and that in developing that team. You don't develop a team by missing practices all the time and just coming out for the games, right? So
very good. Sorry, thank you. Very good, Madam Mayor. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Could I have a motion, please, to receive the presentation?
Also move it, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Watton, seconder.
Councillor Ross.
Councillor McDougall.
Councillor Ross, beat you to it, Councillor McDougall. Mr. Clerk, would you call the vote, please?
Voting's open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Everybody voted?
No, still waiting on Councillor Watton, Brown, and McDougall.
Hi, JP. I'm not seeing anything up on my screen.
Okay. Councillor Watton and Brown, are you able to vote?
I'm in the same position. I'm signing in, but I can vote in favor.
In favor as well.
And Councillor Brown's in favor.
Okay, I'll close the vote. I'm going to vote in favor for Councillor Watton, in favor for Councillor Brown, and in favor for Councillor McDougall. I'm closing the vote now, Madam Mayor. And this carried 6-0.
Thank you very much. And we'll bring the report forward now, and it is on page 24 of your agenda. The report Fire 2020-001, the annual report.
I'll move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watton. Seconder.
Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the report? Seeing none.
I have a question, Madam Mayor, but it's not really to the report.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Chief, if I could, as we know, and we spoke of it earlier, With the most recent fire at Jackrabbit Run, there have been, as there always are, several concerns and questions cited about, you know, just procedure and so on and so forth. And so if you could just speak to just two of the items. One is the need to call in the other departments. I believe we had Janettville and Enniskillen, and also that people are curious, and I know there's a good reason for this, but people are curious why, when there was a lake immediately behind the property that was on fire, that we couldn't access the water from the back of that property. And if you could just speak to that for understanding, I would appreciate it.
Chief?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, thank you for the question through you, Mayor Drew, to the councillors. I'll start with question number one. I actually look at it as being very fortunate to have or to be a part of a mutual aid program. And the mutual aid program in Durham Region has been in existence since 1974, when all the communities were brought together to become the region of Durham. And it has continued on in the fire service for, well, since 1974. I can tell you early in my career, coming up to Port Perry and Sunderland and going to different communities to be a part of their mutual aid training and exercising and what have you, it was extremely beneficial. So, you know, to call on the likes of our neighbors through mutual aid, because we're in a rural fire situation, I'm actually quite excited about. I'm excited that they want to be a part of, you know, our goal and our objectives when it comes to a fire scene. And you know, I know it's probably it might seem a little bit abnormal, but you know, I know with respect to, you know, us in Uxbridge, we do it on a regular basis. You know, when their trucks are committed to a fire scene and they can no longer provide, you know, a level of fire protection to their community, they call on us for mutual aid on a regular basis to go sit in their station and be on standby. Likewise, they come back to us. You know, on the call in question that night, we were using a lot of water volume that, you know, would normally go beyond our means with our two tanker trucks and our pumper trucks, who also but also serve as tanker trucks. It was a large fire, a large devastating fire. So, you know, being able to call on our neighbors like that, you know, again, I'm excited about. As for the lake and your second question, you know, yes, I would suggest that if the lake was closer, the lake was 200 meters away from the road where our pumper trucks were, and you know, that the lake in that area is very much you know, covered in vegetation and the accessibility is difficult. And then when you compound that with the elevation from the lake shore up to the house and where we are orchestrating our fire attack, we just wouldn't be able to provide ourselves with the water supply that we could have used from the lake, and in turn had to use, you know, a tanker shuttle process. You know, that being said, you know, we have done it before, and not too long ago we had a small fire on Washago Bay Lane, and yes, we used tanker shuttle, but we were also preparing to draft water from the lake that day, just in case, you know, things progressed and got worse. But we were able to put the fire out and contain it to the outbuilding in that scenario, and not have to use the lake. But it's been done before. It has been exercised, but again, it's every situation is different, and we can't necessarily rely on the lake. And that day, or that evening, I should say, we couldn't rely on the lake for a water supply at the fire scene.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Chief. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I just have one other question. I note in your report that it says 424 reports were filed with the Ontario Fire Marshal. Do all fires get filed with the Ontario Fire Marshal, or is there a reason that they get filed with the Ontario Fire Marshal? How does that work?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm sorry, through you, Mayor Drew, to the councillors. First of all, we're required to report all fires to the Fire Marshal's office.
Okay.
It's just a matter of to what degree. And there is a guideline for fire services when it comes to reporting fires of suspicious nature, dollar loss, etc. And then there is an expectation that we report all calls, for that matter. So when you look at 424 calls in 2019, again, that is all calls. That's our 34 fires plus our, I believe, 373 non-fire calls.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Watton. I have one question. Can you talk to me, Chief, about, or talk to us, Chief, about the residential platform training prop? What is that all about?
Sure, Mayor Drew. Well, I'm going to be frank. It's a firefighter safety prop, and it's a prop that I personally have used in Oshawa on my days in the trucks. I trained staff under my authority when I was in Clarington, and the advantages to training firefighter survival techniques in a residential environment is invaluable. That's where we have the large majority of our fires, as you all very well know from the last few weeks. So this prop we exercise on a somewhat regular basis. We offer it to our neighbors, and it's extremely beneficial. And if you'd like to come in one day and see it, mask up, and I'll gladly show you what it's all about. It's a very exciting prop, and it was a very inexpensive prop to put forward to our staff for using in training with our volunteers and all staff alike. So yeah, very excited about it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
Councillor Brown, you have a question.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I'll be brief as I can be here. 424 calls were referenced in 2019. Does that include calls for help from neighboring townships or calls where police have been involved?
Yes, it does. Or sorry, through you, Mayor Drew, to the councillor. Yeah. Yes, it does, Councillor Brown. We have to report all calls. Usually our calls with the police are, it's rare that they call us specifically for their business, but there are times, and last year I believe we had 3 occurrences out of the 424 where we were there specifically for police reasoning, and yeah. Okay,
and one subsequent, and that'll be it from me on this. Why are rescues so high?
Rescues are high because of our vehicular traffic in and through Scugog. Again, our calls on Lake Scugog last year or other rescue types were minimal compared to, I believe, when it comes to vehicular accidents or incidents, that we had 131 calls. And again, it's just it's indicative of the amount of or the volume of traffic that travels through Scugog. You have Highway 7A, which is an artery to Highway 35. You have Highway 712, which is an artery to the north, along with Simcoe Street and Regional Road 57. And then the attractions. Again, Scugog is a beautiful community with a lot to do that the outside likes to come and enjoy, along with the casino.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and thank you, Chief. I don't see any other questions, and I just want to echo some of the councillors have already mentioned it, but congratulations, Chief, to you and your department, first of all, for the report and the successes of last year, but in particular in the last few weeks where we've had 3 major fires, and it's really a testament to the skill of our fire department. The adjoining properties, in all cases, had very, very minimal damage, and that is a real testament, I believe, to the skill of our department. And we in Scugog have every reason to feel really safe in the protection that we have from our fire department. So please pass along from all of us on council our appreciation to the fine work that they do every day.
Thank you, Mayor Drew. I will share that with my staff. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. We have to vote on that, Mr. Clerk.
Yes,
vote on the
Madam Mayor,
recommendation to receive the report. Okay, would you call the questions, please?
Voting is open.
Pardon me, JP, it appears that my system's down on this side.
It just came on my side, like just as you're speaking. Is it still down?
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay. And Councillor Brown, are you?
I am unable to vote. There's nothing on my screen that asks me to do that.
Okay, try refreshing your screen, as in going out of it and coming back into it. But if you could vote verbally, I can vote for you if you like.
Approved or in favor.
Thank you. I'm voting in favor for Councillor Brown and closing the vote. 6-0, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Chief Burney. And now we'll move on to report number 12.2 on page 17, the Port Perry Waterfront Action Plan update. And there's a recommendation there that the update be received. Could I have a mover, please?
Also move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watton, seconder.
Councillor Ross, seconds.
Councillor Ross, thank you very much. Questions? Oh, wait a minute. We have Robin Prentice here to speak to the report.
Yes, I'm here, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
JP, the clerk will just pull up. The clerk's just going to pull up the concepts, and I'm just going to provide a brief overview of them. So the one thing I wanted to start with is we held a workshop back in February, and that was good consultation where we had 3 different groups come in, and each of those groups created 3 different concepts themselves. So overall, it generated 9 different concepts. And then from those 9 concepts, the design team with staff kind of whittled that down to 3 different concepts that we're now taking out and are out for public consultation through an online survey. So just an overview of those. Some of the givens that we would find in each of the concepts. We will be maintaining and repurposing the old mill. That was a given and an assumption. We will be creating a new urban square at the foot of Queen Street. We are going to be incorporating the William Leishman sculpture into the waterfront, but we are asking for different opinions as to the best location for that sculpture. The concepts each look at relocating the pumping station that's currently within the waterfront. They all implement the Lake Scugog Enhancement Project, so that was one of the assumptions and the base for this project on all 3 concepts. Each of them do look to remove or relocate the Latcham Centre in the medium and long term, as well as integrate an open streets pilot project on the Queen Street. So those are some of the assumptions that you'll see on each of the concepts. So if you can just go to the next page, JP. So concept 1 is the concept that maintains both of the ball diamonds as well as the tennis courts. It does add more recreational facilities. A new senior center is proposed in this concept in a new mixed-use building at the corner of Water and North Street. The marina is combined with public washrooms in one building adjacent to the marina. And the parking lots that are off of Water Street in this area have both been maintained. And in this concept, the William Leishman sculpture is proposed in the north end in Birdseye Park. So that's just a brief overview of this concept that's out there for comment. And if we can go to the next page. On concept 2, this concept was looking at maintaining the south ball diamond and tennis courts, but it did consider relocating the north ball diamond elsewhere in Port Perry, and it takes a look at what could we do with that area. There is a new hard surface pavilion proposed at the end of Casimir Street that could be used for events. This concept looked at introducing a new urban beach with sand and seating, but no direct access to the lake. The marina is relocated north to Birdseye Park, and a new building that combines the senior center marina building and public washrooms is also proposed near this area. The parking lots that are off of Water Street in this area, the municipal parking lots, have proposed to be removed. And the outdoor pool has also proposed to be removed in this, and it just shows an idea of for the potential for that area should an indoor pool be built sometime in the long term. What could be done with that space if the outdoor pool was removed? And the William Leishman sculpture is proposed in this concept at the foot of North Street near the library. And then for the third and final concept that's out for comment and feedback, this is the concept in which both ball diamonds and the tennis courts have been relocated elsewhere within the township. And this concept provides a lot of gardens, lawns, and trees with new park pavilions. It introduces new play facilities and a new splash pad in the area at the foot of Casimir Street. And there's two options for where a potential senior center could go on this concept. One option would be with a combined marina building and public washrooms near the old mill. And another option would be to combine the senior center with a youth center near the Joe Fowler Memorial Park. In this concept, one parking lot off Water Street has been maintained and one would be proposed to be removed. And the William Leishman sculpture in this concept was proposed near the south end of the waterfront, near the grocery store and the causeway. So that's just an overview of the concepts that are out there. We're looking for feedback. We're promoting an online survey where people can click through the different elements that are in these concepts. And we're not looking for feedback on which concept you like particularly. We're looking for feedback on the individual elements that are within each of those concepts, because ultimately we see the preferred plan being a combination of all three concepts based on the feedback that we will be receiving. So just on my last page, Mr. Clerk, with respect to next steps, as I mentioned, we do have a survey ongoing on these three options online that we're promoting. We do also accept feedback through email, and we do have copies of the concepts should someone request them. And the survey is out online until about early July. We will be taking a look at all the feedback received through that survey on the three concepts and reporting back to council in the fall with the results of the survey and any of the feedback. And based on the feedback, we will be preparing a draft waterfront action plan and implementation strategy that we would then take out in the fall for further consultation on that draft plan. And then ultimately we would report back to council with a final plan and preferred implementation strategy by the end of the year in December. So the one thing I did want to mention is the consultation that will take place in the fall ultimately will depend on the situation we're dealing with at the time with respect to COVID, with respect to what form that consultation takes. And so we'll have to reevaluate at that time and perhaps look at a different variety of ways to get consultation on the draft preferred plan and implementation strategy. So that's just a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor, are you still there? Madam Mayor, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Sorry, a little bit of a glitch there. Could you tell me, Ms. Prentice, how you access the site? What's the address to access the site?
Sure.
To? Mm-hmm.
Sure. We are promoting the survey through our new engagement platform that we're using now at the township to try and get more feedback from the residents. And it's through the my.scugog.ca website. And then if you click on the Waterfront Action Plan project page, and you can access the survey there, and you can also view the concepts.
Thank you very much. I have a number of questions, and I'll call on Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Prentice, for the presentation. I had two questions, but I think one you've sort of answered. I'll ask it anyway. You say that additional public consultation is happening in the fall. So if you can just go over very quickly how that can be done. I think you said online for one. And when can we expect to reach phase 3?
Sure. So phase 3 would take place over the fall, and that's where we get into taking all the feedback we've received on the 3 options and whittling them into one preferred plan and an implementation strategy that would go with that. So that's phase 3, and that will take place starting in the fall, well, late summer, early fall. And as for the consultation, we want to take out the plan that we kind of put together as the proposed draft preferred plan, and take that back out and say, did we listen to your feedback and get some more feedback on that? As we all know, living in this time, we do have to kind of react to the situation at the time. I'm not sure we'll be able to get large groups together in the fall, so we'll have to see, but it could be a variety of different options of that consultation, most likely virtual, but we'll see what we can do for some potential in person as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 2 questions or 2 comments, I guess. The comments are concerning the public perception and understanding of the project itself and the scope. The scope of the project is I find it very pie in the sky. I remember going to the public open house and listening to some of the people talking and hearing some of the ideas, which was great, a great brainstorming session, everything. And now seeing that they've been introduced here, my concern is I'm concerned that the public will look at this and think that it's a go without taking into account the funding that's needed. Can you maybe just explain to me how will the township manage these expectations?
Sure. So that, through you, Madam Mayor, that would come out through the implementation strategy. So the implementation strategy will kind of look at the preferred plan and what we would like to see, but it would also put together some short, medium, and long-term recommendations with respect to what you could look at, potentially some of that low-hanging fruit within the next few years that could be implemented, as well as kind of tailoring some of the expectations for the longer term. As I mentioned, depending on what comes out through the plan, if it's dependent on other things, like for example, if things are relocated, obviously things would be dependent on, you couldn't put something in its place until it is relocated. So it's just kind of looking at how we implement the plan that we ultimately come up with, as well as looking at different funding mechanisms that could be used. So it will try and tamper some of those expectations.
Okay, perfect. And just secondly, through you, Madam Mayor, all these concepts take into account the private property listed that's the independent grocer bosses right now. And it's whether through the concepts, there's the 3 different, ideas of what could happen. Given that this is private property, how can this be part of the actual plan when it's beyond the township's control?
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. So we weren't trying to plan for, obviously, it is private property and we do recognize that in terms of the south end there, but it is something we want to include in the vision so that it ultimately works together. So that way, when those landowners do come forward, we can say, okay, let's see how it fits in with this ultimate vision for this area. We could also take this as part of our next official plan review and zoning bylaw review and look at ways that we could encourage what we would like to see in that area, so that it ultimately makes it easier for the landowners in that area to strive towards some of that preferred development, but it's also just a starting point with respect to future discussions with those private owners.
Okay, great. And this would be communicated to the public accordingly.
Yes, we can address that through the implementation strategy.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Kiesebrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank our manager of planning, Robin Prentice, for the consultation that the planning partners and the public have contributed to this so far. Especially I'm really happy to see that the RH Cornish February consultations with 100 students that were consulted. I know council really appreciated getting the videos of the kids' ideas, and I'm glad that they were able to participate before the pandemic hit and be a part of this. I also wanted to thank Lori Bowers. The My Scugog Our Community interactive survey that's been launched is really a fun game almost, and given everybody's at home right now, I hope that everyone will join in, because it's actually really fun to use the program and put your thoughts into there. And the comments that we're getting on the website is really cool as well. So I just basically wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Well said. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Robin, for your presentation. I think Councillor Ross captured most of my questions. I'm eager like everybody. There's lots of great stuff in here. I imagine that after the final kind of, when we get this nailed down, it'll still be a rather influx document. Is that the kind of idea?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that is the idea. Ultimately, what you'd like to do is set out a vision that you want to see, and it helps you plan as you move through various annual budget programs, or if certain funding opportunities come up. Then you obviously have an opportunity to either fast track things or work with the funding mechanisms you have at your disposal. So it is meant to be flexible, but the implementation strategy will hopefully set out some sort of a guidance and direction. And again, with any plan, you kind of take a look at it every so often just to make sure you want to continue on the same path.
Okay, very good. And for today, we're just moving this into the next phase. Is that correct?
Yes, so through you, Madam Mayor, it was more just an update in terms of where we're at and just an overview in terms of next steps, and just a touch point with council to say the survey's out there now, and we just another opportunity for us to promote that and get some more feedback on those options that are out there. And then, yeah, just to provide a status update.
Very good. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Prentice.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Most of my questions have been asked, so I will just ask Ms. Prentice, did we circle back to the schools, particularly RH Cornish, and remind them of the link now that they can provide their feedback on?
Yes, so through you, Madam Mayor, that was one of my goals, and I did send it out to the teacher. It was my hopes that she could forward it on to the students, particularly those ones that we were able to consult with, because it was a really interesting feedback session with the younger generation. So, and I do think, as Ms. Councillor Kiesebrink noted, it is a fun interactive survey that I think the students would enjoy. So we did send the link out to them, so I'm hopeful it went out. I'll have to follow up to see if it went out before the end of the school year here.
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guido. I don't see any other questions, and I would like to add my thanks. I think this is probably the most consultation that we've done on projects, and I don't think that anybody could say that they didn't have an opportunity to have some input into this this whole exercise, this whole waterfront strategy, and that is just fantastic that we've had all of this consultation with our public, and so they can buy into the project, whatever concept we come up with at the end. So thank you, Ms. Prentice, for all of the work that you've done, and all of the other staff that have worked so hard on this. So thank you. And we have the
Madam Mayor, I have one question, please.
Oh,
Excuse
I'm
me.
sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If I might, through you, with respect to the schools, did we approach the other schools as well? Or was it only, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. We did, I think, try and touch base with them. Unfortunately, with everything that was going on, there just wasn't enough time, and I'm not sure if we got as much interest from the other schools, but we did try and reach out, I believe. Lori Bowers, our communications manager, has been working tirelessly on this project as well. So I do want to thank her and her staff for helping promote this and get the word out there. But yeah, we did try and touch base. I'm not sure how far we got with that given the ongoing situation.
Okay, well, and just further, if I may, to that, perhaps now would be a good time, or, you know, prepare to put it out there for September. Or I guess you said it closed before then, didn't you? The survey.
Yeah,
Yes.
the survey
Yeah.
will be closing in early July, but perhaps it's something we touch base with on the preferred plan in September. So that's something we will keep in mind.
Just thinking with the online learning and everybody doing different stuff, it might be something cool to get students involved into the, just even the website. So it was just a thought. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It was a teacher at RH Cornish that started this whole process with getting the kids involved. It was pretty exciting. The kids were really excited too. So thank you very much. We have a recommendation there. We have a mover and seconder, do we not, Mr. Clerk? And could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we do have a mover and a seconder, and the voting is now open. Seeing everyone has voted, I'm closing the vote now. Carried, Madam Mayor, 6-0.
Thank you very much. We have two pieces of correspondence, and we'll probably deal with them both at the same time, 13.1 and 13.2. Councillor Brown has declared a conflict of interest on this, a pecuniary interest. Could I, questions or comments on the two pieces of correspondence? It's all on the same subject of the open streets concept for Port Perry, downtown Port Perry. I know that I have received a lot of concern in the community about safety during COVID. People are trying very hard to keep their social distancing, but to the extent where they're actually walking out into the traffic to keep 6 feet away from somebody else. So is there any questions or comments? Councillor Watton, Councillor Guido, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. On 13.1, the correspondence we received from the BIA, I would just like to ask our CAO what has changed, or if anything has changed, from the June 12th EDAC meeting, where the chair of the BIA, Ms. McLeod, presented to the EDAC committee the survey results, and there was quite an in-depth conversation in respect to what the BIA's next steps were required to be prior to township staff becoming involved, and it included action for them to take up with their membership, because as we're all aware, the results were more like a 50-50 of the survey, and I believe our CAO had indicated that that isn't a statistic that he'd be willing to bring forward to council with any type of recommendation, given that response from the survey, and that their action was to work with their membership rather than it coming back to staff. And that was explained several times, or at least twice, during the meeting, that staff was not at the position to start working on this. And then the letters dated June 17th. So I'm not sure if something transpired in 5 days, which would have led the chair to approach the township again rather than the BIA membership.
I will ask our CAO, Mr. Lohr, to answer that. But I do recall at that meeting as well, there was some discussion about and a willingness to have a look at what we had as a township, what had been developed so far on the pilot project. But I will ask our CAO, Mr. Allure, to answer your question. Oh, I'll say or Councilor or Director Heritage. Is that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would suggest that I believe Director Heritage provided a summary for council in an email just to inform the subject based on the 2 pieces of correspondence that council received in their agenda package this evening. And if I would suggest, Madam Mayor, that perhaps Director Heritage could summarize that, and I think it will set maybe the frame, the discussion that needs to happen, and the direction that staff are looking for
Okay.
from council.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Director Heritage?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I prepared an email just the other day for council's consideration in terms of trying to move this issue forward. The BIA, as outlined in their letter on June 17th, is basically requesting the assistance of township staff to develop ideas to increase public spaces along Queen Street in response to the current pandemic. So in order to provide an appropriate framework, staff contacted the chair of the BIA to discuss the parameters that should be considered in any concept plan for Queen Street. And those parameters are outlined in my email in terms of limiting the closure to the weekends, Friday to Sunday or Saturday to Sunday, over the summer months. The closure should include, and I know we had a number of discussions regarding where should the closure be. Should the closure be between Water and Perry, or should it include as well from Perry to John? And that was the position that was being brought forward by Brigida. And then leaving the ability for vehicular traffic to travel along Perry. So it would be open at that location. There was also discussion with the chair of the BIA regarding whether it should be a full closure or a partial closure. And the position that she was putting forward was that it should be a partial closure in retaining one of the lanes to remain open and the other lane to be transformed into parallel parking. So at the end of the day, it would permit some additional space along the sidewalk because the sidewalks are narrow on both sides of the road on Queen Street. So it would increase the width of the sidewalks to include where the current parallel parking is on both sides to ensure that there would be the appropriate social distancing or physical distancing on both sides of the road. She had indicated there were some pinch points, I guess you would call them, along Queen Street, one being in front of the Nutty Chocolatier. So that would ensure that there would be sufficient physical distancing in that location. We also had a discussion with the chair of the BIA regarding Peterborough, and Peterborough had just recently put together a plan that included providing additional pedestrian space along their downtown BIA area, and it was a partial closure as well, closing up one lane, keeping one lane open, and increasing the pedestrian area. However, this plan was put in place for the entire summer, 7 days a week for the months of July and August. The chair was suggesting for Queen Street was that it would be, as I indicated, just on weekends, perhaps for the 2 months during the summer, July and August. That, from a logistics point of view, may pose considerable hardship, I guess, for township staff in terms of bringing out and putting up barriers on Friday or Saturday and then taking them down on Sunday every weekend. So I think further consideration needs to be had on that item. We're also looking at what the additional cost would be to incur above and beyond the original budget of $2,500. As you may recall, this project, the pilot project, was included in the strategic plan, and $2,500 was allocated for that project. The staff had retained specialized expertise to move the process forward. However, we ended up halting it due to COVID-19, as well as the survey that was conducted, and as Councillor Guido had indicated, it was a 50-50 split. So there was no real consensus on moving forward in terms of any type of closure on Queen Street. So what staff is recommending is that we're trying to seek council direction as to whether this project should proceed in light of the 50-50 survey results. And one of the options we could look at is recommending that the Queen Street be closed as a pilot project for the month of July, for each weekend in July, and see how it works, and put that back on the BIA, that suggestion. And if they're in favor of that, we'd be looking for a board resolution, a BIA board resolution in support of that. If they don't support it, then I don't think we should be or recommending that we proceed with the project at this point in time. So those are my comments, Madam Mayor, on this matter.
Thank you, Director Heritage, and thank you for all of the work and thought that you put into your conversations with the chair of the BIA, as well as thinking about how logistically it could work.
Well, it was Robin Prentice that had the direct conversation with the chair of the BIA, and I've had extensive conversations with Robin in terms of putting this together.
Thank you, Ms. Prentice. Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Guido?
Yes, it does. And may I ask, have all of council, and I apologize, Director Heritage, I know you sent the email to us this morning, but I myself haven't had a chance to open it up yet. But has all of council received a copy of the survey and the results?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I attached the results of the survey to the email. So council has that in front of them, and they can open up and read the results of the survey.
All right, thank you. I feel it's important that council sees the positive comments in there as well as the negative comments.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Guido. Councillor Watton, you have a motion you would like to make, I see.
Well, I did, because further to, and I'll just qualify before I do make that motion. When I read the BIA letter as well, and then further to that, I read Director Heritage's email and so on. My concern is that somebody has to make some sort of movement forward if this is even going to get tried. So my motion is framed around that, and also around what other areas are doing in trying to how they're opening up their public spaces and utilizing them, and so on and so forth. So if I can just go ahead and make the motion, or I can continue trying to express the further reasons, but most of the reasons are included within my motion. So maybe I'll just, if it's all right with you, Madam Mayor, just make that.
Yes, please go ahead. I don't have any other questions or speakers, so at this point, there will be after your motion. Please go ahead.
Okay, so just as Ontario and the region and Scugog are all looking for innovative ways that public places and spaces could be used to support economic recovery, and many areas are implementing a variety of temporary or permanent changes to these public realms to help with economic recovery, and that social distancing will for sure continue to be a major defense against COVID-19. I would like to move that, in addition to that, the correspondence being received that subject to concurrence with the Port Perry BIA board, that Queen Street from Water Street to Perry Street and Perry Street to John Street be closed for vehicular traffic, but be open for pedestrian use on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or any combination thereof for the month of July. And that Perry Street would remain open during that time, and that the open street pilot project options could be better developed and presented to council and the Port Perry BIA prior to August 2020. That would be the end of my motion, but I believe it would give us a better chance to assess the options that are out there. It would give us a chance and the BIA a chance to see how it would impact the retail businesses and the restaurants downtown, and how well the public would be inclined to use that open space. I mean, one of the great challenges will be to dispel the fear and, create trust in the trust in the safety of what we're doing. And I'm sure there will be much feedback about the other challenges, such as the parking and things like that. But that's my motion, Madam Mayor, up to the point that we could explore the options and have it presented back to council and the Port Perry BIA prior to the August. So it would be the 4 weekends in July or some form of that.
Thank you, Councillor Watton. And I see on the chat that Councillor Kiesebrink would like to second the motion, and you have comments. Please go ahead, Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In Wellington, they've announced that they're temporarily closing some streets in their downtown Elora to vehicles to leave them open for pedestrians for physical distancing. In Kingston, they are trying to create space due to the COVID-19 and are doing a series of road and lane closures starting the week of June 22nd, specifically because sidewalks are so narrow and it's so difficult to socially distance. And then we've already heard from Director Heritage in Peterborough how they're not allowing cars on George Street. And again, because of physical distancing. So I realized that there was some work done with the idea of the Queen Street closure from a tourism perspective before, but it's ironic because we're also talking about social distancing, which has to do with the pandemic. So I wonder if we could maybe even lay aside discussions regarding Queen Street closure as a tourism tool, but mostly for now address it from the standpoint of health and safety for the public. I think all of council, I've been inundated with emails from people who are gravely concerned and having to step into the street. Like the Port Cheese store, I was walking by there with my daughter, and they have a table in front of the store and they're taking orders. So people have to step outside in the street to get around because they need that space to place their orders and so on. So I think right now we're dealing with something a little bit bigger than just the merits of having the downtown closed. And I would support this motion for now with the parameters defined of just the weekend and just the 1 month, just given the pandemic and the safety requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Guido on the motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And please, because the motion hasn't been flashed in front of us, given that Councillor Watton just made it, but is the motion, if I understand it correctly, to move forward with closing the streets for the 4 weeks in July, the 4 weekends?
I believe so, yes. And Mr. Clerk, is there any possibility of getting that motion up on the screen?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
He only has part of it.
So while JP's doing that kindly for us, can I just ask then, truly, what is the plan? And I ask that because while we have all received many questions from residents and tourists alike asking how we can make our roads and passageways more safe for anyone on there, but what is the plan? Are we going to be filling the streets with anything, or is it simply for pedestrian walkway? Will businesses be allowed to put tables and chairs in the streets? Given that when we spoke about this at EDAC on the 12th, we were not comfortable, that the entire membership wasn't comfortable, and there were still questions that needed to be addressed. What is our communication plan to the membership, not the board, but the membership, and other considerations like Durham Transit? How is all of this being factored in? I know Peterborough tried it on Friday and they reopened on Saturday. How do we avoid a messy mistake?
Madam Mayor, are you able to see the motion now?
Yes, I can see it. Can everybody see the motion now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Who would like to answer Councillor Guido's question? Director Heritage, could you take a stab at it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's a lot of conversation and dialogue that has to go on. If the BIA board is in support of this resolution, I think that's the first step. And we can take it from there in terms of developing a plan. And as Councillor Kiesebrink had indicated, physical distancing is one of the major parameters, and that's what came out of Robin's dialogue with Brigitte, was that physical distancing was an extremely important component of any plan that would come forward. So I think where we go from here is to develop a couple of concepts, and if the board's in favor of that, and bring it to the BIA for input.
And if I might, Madam Mayor, one of my thoughts with this motion was that even if we chose as a council just for Saturdays, it may give us an opportunity to be better able to see what the potential and what the options could actually be. Hence my desire only to have it for the 4 weeks in July. I mean, we've closed the streets many times for, with people liking it, with people not liking it through the course of the summer months. So, I think there are many challenges that would have to be addressed, but they may not, what is considered a challenge at this point may not truly be a challenge. And also to Councillor Guido's comments, I would envision that it would allow, and maybe I'm wrong, I would hope that it would allow a bit of the expansion of the retail out into the streets to provide more ability for the physical distancing, so that for example, the cheese company, as Councillor Kiesebrink spoke to, with their table and the people lined up waiting to place their order, to me, I would envision people maybe being out further from the sidewalk and so on, waiting their turn, or maybe going to another store. I don't really know either the answers, but I think if we don't try it, we will never have the answers.
Good point. Councillor Guido, does that answer your question?
Well, somewhat, if I may continue though. So yes. The first weekend in July is 12 days away. And if providing we're going the first weekend in July. And again, my concern goes back to the fact that we don't have a plan, and that the board and the membership are, may have two different thoughts. While I appreciate that the board is there as the elected official, this is a conversation that has to happen with storekeepers and guidelines about how and they use the space, and if we're going to be adding extra things to the street, does that really allow for more social distancing if we're having to dodge obstacles now? I just would feel far more comfortable if a plan was presented to council to say this is what the parameters are for our businesses and how they're allowed to use this open street. Right now would be voting to support the plan to move forward, but we don't know what that plan looks like and how it may adversely or positively impact our businesses. Mayor,
could I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe I could help and just put some clarity into Councillor Watson's resolution. So the letter from the BIA asked really for the township to create a plan. And then the discussion at the Economic Development Committee was about creating a plan, and then the chairman of the BIA thought that once she had a plan or a couple of options of a plan, felt confident that the majority of the BIA membership would get on board with an open street plan. So then the letter came back, as you see, which in all sense says, could you help create a plan and some options for us? Well, to create that plan, because the project came to a halt with COVID-19, and because there was a lot of disagreement about having an open street pilot in the downtown. So to kickstart that and actually create some options, realistically, you're talking about having a couple of options closer to the end of July, and then shopping those options around with the BIA and the BIA with its memberships, and maybe having some agreement, and as you said, Councillor Guido, a plan, a proper plan for the 1st of August, for early August. Half the summer's gone. No social distancing for the month of July. So as you know, Councillor Guido, I was quite firm that I thought this needed to be a made in BIA solution being facilitated by the township, not driven so much by the township. However, Councillor Watton's resolution does say, subject to concurrence with the BIA board, that just close the street for the month of July while we prepare concept plans that we can bring back to the BIA and council sometime in July, probably near the latter part of July, and then maybe build on the closure for the month of August. It's either that or continue as we are without the street closed and open for pedestrians until probably August. This kind of finds a middle ground, and after a week or two, if they don't like it, they can, I guess, they open it back up in July till the plans are ready and shopped around and the decision's made. More along the line that she's looking for, if it's possible. Not sure if you clearly understood what Mr. Heritage described, but what they're asking for is not that easily achieved either. I can elaborate further on that if you wish. But so again, just to wrap up, gets the street open for pedestrians and allows the plans to be developed, and then a revisiting of the whole thing. Is it working, is it not? And are the plans, that the options that are created worthy of pursuing for the rest of the summer?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Guido, does that answer your questions?
Yes, and Madam Mayor, one more question. In Councillor Watton's motion, who is making the determination? It says on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or any combination. Who is setting forward the decision as to which days the roads will be closed?
I believe it says in the second sentence, subject to concurrence with the Perry BIA board. So they would, if I'm understanding it correctly, they would determine what days. Is that your intention, Councillor Watton?
Well, yes, Madam Mayor, I would expect this isn't going anywhere if the board does not agree. And I know that if I understood correctly from EDAC that, you know, I really thought that it was going to go more out to the membership prior to the letter that came back, much to, you know, I agree with Councillor Guido on that. I thought that, but I also understand the point where they have nothing to present really to the membership other than, you know, my motion saying let's close or let's open the streets to pedestrians rather than vehicles for that. So I honestly don't know what would be better, but in also thinking through for the weekend stuff, if we closed the streets on Friday and opened them up on Monday, we wouldn't have to have overtime for staff. But I think that would also be perhaps a bit extreme and would maybe suggest just Saturday, Sunday. But that's, again, I felt that would be up to council to maybe pick a choice and then give it to the board to make a decision.
Is that your intention for us to determine tonight, or would you be looking for the BIA's input on what days to close, day or days?
I would hope that the BIA would be able to come to some decision on that.
Okay, thank you. As long as they understand our thinking on that about the Friday to Sunday. Okay, so Councillor Guido.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, you're
That's okay.
gonna get frustrated with me. My last question or point is accessible parking. So I would like that is considered in any solution that the BIA may come up with, is that while we are making it accessible for pedestrians to walk, we also have to make it accessible for pedestrians who have mobility issues to get as close to that downtown as possible for doing their whatever activities they're choosing to do downtown.
Yes, that's a good comment, and it's something that we should make a plan for. Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Guido?
No, I've well used my 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Councillor McDougall.
Just unmuting thing. I think Councillor Guido's asked several of the questions that I had on the tip of my tongue with regards to accessible parking, but I'm finding that the motion is actually quite written in stone. It says, "Thou shalt close the streets," and it says from John to Perry and Perry to Water, and it's at the determination of the BIA board for the hours. All of the considerations that we're asking for and discussing right now are not part of this motion. This motion is that and that alone. I would preferably have this motion to read such that be the main consideration. It go to staff and they come back to council and the BIA with the recommendation.
Mayor, that's the next that's the option that we'll be working on through the end of June and early July. That option will leave the status quo until staff comes back with those options, which I can tell you will be near the latter part of July, if that.
So in the meantime, if we don't do something, there will be no effort to have social distancing in July. Anything else, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm struggling. I'm thinking of the dentist office and the businesses between John and Perry that have driveways out into this street. Again, I would like nothing more than be able to walk and skateboard and everything else down this asphalt and enjoy an ice cream cone in the middle of the street as I do, you know, and on Canada Day or many other times. But this is a closure from Friday. Well, we don't know what the closure is. We don't know if it's a week or if it's just on the weekends, or we don't know what it is. The motion is not.
It says subject to the concurrence of the BIA board. So we would look to the BIA board, it's my understanding by this motion, we would look to the BIA board to determine those days, and we would abide by that. Have I understood that correctly, Councillor Watton and Director Heritage?
I would say you understand it correctly. Councillor McDougall makes some good points as well. And I'm just trying to think my way through this, but what if we, based on what Councillor McDougall just said, what about if we put it out there that we only closed it on Sundays? I'm just throwing it out there on Sundays because those businesses are not open. I just well, the businesses like the dentist and those businesses aren't open.
A lot of our businesses aren't open.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The way the resolution is structured, they could just decide to close on Sundays only. It's Friday or Saturday or Sunday or any combination thereof.
Right. That's what the point I was making.
Yeah.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm not seeing Friday. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm not seeing Friday. I'm just seeing on concurrence of the BIA board. I'm not seeing anything about days.
It says that subject to concurrence with the Port Perry BIA board, Queen Street from Water Street to Perry Street and Perry Street to John Street be closed to vehicular traffic and opened for pedestrian use on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or any combination thereof during July 2020.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't scroll down to the next line.
Okay.
But again, the other option I would maybe a friendly amendment, but I'm not sure. Perhaps just Perry to Water Street might be a better option, but I don't know. I don't have the answers. I really like this idea, but again, I want it well thought out, and I don't know if I can get that. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think most of my points have been covered. Just a comment. I think that it's important to have a balance is needed in this decision. It's important, obviously, to act in a timely manner due to COVID and the comfort level of our residents and shop owners. But I also think that Councillor Guido's comments are valued, that we don't want to rush into this with the best intentions and get it wrong. Am I understanding this correctly, that Councillor Watton's motion is purely a stopgap, and it would be communicated properly that way, that it's a stopgap until a more formal regulation policy is determined as to what the BIA, the township, and everybody else wants moving forward in the month of August? Is that correct?
It's my understanding that what we're doing here is addressing the safety aspects of physical distancing for the month of July. And the upside part of that is that it will give an experience to the BIA members of how it could work. And while we cross our T's and dot the I's during the July period, they can have the experience of doing it, and then can make a more informed decision for August.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Have I got that correct, Councillor Watton and Director Heritage? And
well, that was
CIO?
certainly my hope, so that it was all along. My goal is for this to be a trial pilot project to see if there, to see what really actually needs to be done to make it really work, or if as someone mentioned, the membership doesn't like it at all, or the BIA board doesn't like it, or it's just not working, similar to what happened in Peterborough, that then we just don't move forward on it. But I really believe that unless we try something, we're not going to be any further ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I just just to that comment, my only concern is that if we're doing this as a trial, then I think we should have a proper plan going ahead. But if we're doing this for, a COVID reaction for the safety of the community, shop owners, residents, tourists, everything, then it's a different thing. We can go into it, figure it out as we go. But if it's a trial, then I think we need rules and regulations as to what's going to happen, because the future of this program then would depend on what we're doing now. And I think we're looking at it more from a separate lens, and that we've had the concerns from people of, I got to walk into the street because I'm, physically distancing. And that's the knee-jerk reaction we're having right now, is to close it now. Whereas if it's a trial, then, we should have rules as to who can have, a clothes rack in the street and where can people line up, and, so it's all framed out. So if we're going to...
Okay, take away the word trial.
Sure, and that's the point. Is that I think we just need to communicate it properly, is that if this is to the BIA and to the residents, that if this is a trial, then it's going to be under far more scrutiny than it is if it's a reaction to COVID, where people are, okay, we'll get it right in the next month kind of thing. So I think we just need to make sure we're approaching it with the right scope.
Comments from the mover or seconder or Director Heritage or CAO?
Well, Madam Mayor, I will just say that in reading the report that we received, where of all the different locations that are looking at different ways of trying to open up their public spaces and so on and so forth to help with economic recovery, and we have a downtown that is desperately in need of people to be able to shop in their shops. It was my thought that if we did this for a month, we could still meet the health requirements of social distancing if we opened up the street. If we do not, we will not be able to meet the social distancing requirements. So to Councillor Ross's comments, absolutely. That is, it is an opportunity hidden in a crisis, in my opinion.
Yes. Further, Councillor Ross?
If I may, is it possible just to change the wording of it? I'm just trying to go through it to figure out where the trial part is in there. Maybe it's not.
There is no trial in there. It was a word I used in one of my comments, but right. It does say pilot project.
Then that's at the bottom in reference to a pilot project being developed while this.
Exactly. There is no comment in the motion about trial.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think, you see what's happening, whether it's Peterborough or in other communities that, are ahead of COVID by a couple of weeks, in Europe and stuff, and what they've done, it's a reactionary thing. And I think hopefully some good can come of it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDougall, you have another question or comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for indulging me. Under the guise of COVID and the safety, Scugog is Port Perry specifically is getting busier on the weekends. And it's only going to get busier as the summer progresses. From that standpoint alone, I can see the value in this. I'm struggling with the lack of planning, but I do see the value from a social distancing standpoint for sure. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, and the other thing is, once this motion passes or whatever happens to this motion tonight, a lot can happen in discussions with the BIA to put more plans in place. But there's really not a benefit to having a lot of discussion on that if we don't pass this motion tonight. So there's lots of thoughts out there, and for the safety, there's lots of things that we can do, and there's lots of things that we would learn during July too, to add to the plan for the future. Councillor Kiesebrink?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be in support of both and. So doing this motion now in the short term to make sure that we are keeping the public safe while at the same time staff and BIA further developing their strategies that can then be implemented after July.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder. Mr. Clerk, would you call the vote, please?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, the voting is open. Councillor Watton and Ross, I believe you may have timed out in that time, so you might want to just refresh your screen.
Oh,
Could I just ask, I think the vote that's up is on the BIA.
Oh,
Yep, that's correct.
I don't think that's Councillor Watton's motion right now.
yes, it was to the correspondence received. The first line there is that the correspondence received from the BIA and further that's subject to.
did you want to include 13.2 as well, the Chamber of Commerce?
Madam Mayor, just for my ease of rewriting that right now, could we just do it separately?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Go ahead. And the vote.
JP, just on two separate screens here, there are two separate motions. The one that's being voted on doesn't have the during the month of July 2020 on it.
Huh?
Try scrolling down.
I'd scroll down.
Scroll down.
I'll take your word for it that it's there. Okay.
Would you like me to read it? No? Okay.
I'm sorry. Maybe, Madam Mayor, can you just read the last line that we're voting on? I can't scroll down any further.
Okay, I'll read the whole thing. That the correspondence received from the Port Perry Business Improvement Area Board seeking assistance to explore and plan for opening up parts of the BIA area be received. That subject to concurrence with the Port Perry BIA Board, Queen Street from Water Street to Perry Street and Perry Street to John Street be closed to vehicular traffic and open for pedestrian use on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or any combination thereof during July 2020, that Perry Street remain open, and that during the month of July 2020, the open street pedestrian pilot project options be developed and presented to Council and the Port Perry BIA prior to August 2020. And the vote is open.
Councillor McDougall, are you okay to vote? Councillor McDougall, are you still there?
Yes, thank you, JP. This is to accept the correspondence and approve the motion?
Yes.
Okay, seeing that everyone has voted now, I am closing the vote. Madam Mayor, that's carried 5-0 with Councillor Brown not voting, having a pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk, and thank you, Council, for that was a very good discussion. We'll move on. There's no new business or general information, no closed session needed. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
Madam Mayor, my apologies. Could we just do 13.2? That's my fault.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. 13.2, could I have a motion to receive the letter from the Chamber of Commerce?
Madam Mayor, Councillor McDougall, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kieserbrink seconded. Mr. Clerk, would you call the vote, please?
Yeah, voting is open, Madam Mayor. Seeing that everyone has voted, I am closing the vote. That's carried 5-0, and Madam Mayor, Councillor Brown again did not vote.
Okay, thank you. Now we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, sorry, Councillor McDougall.
Yes.
Sorry, we're just at. We didn't get a chance to ask questions on the emergency orders, like the things we're doing in the township at this point in time. Can I ask that now?
Our CAO gave the report at the beginning of the meeting. Did you have some questions on that?
My question was on the report that was part of Kevin Heritage's presentation for that. There was a discussion that there's some patios on private properties, and
Yes.
when the emergency orders will be rescinded from the province, those patios will have to be dismantled and they go back to their original patios. How
Yes.
would we go about extending the opportunity for those businesses to have part, some, all of those patio spaces?
They would have to reapply, is my understanding, Director Heritage?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. They would have to reapply, and they would have to comply with the maximum capacity figures that apply to those restaurants, as well as they'd have to have sufficient washrooms to accommodate any additional customers.
So they would not be able to open up those, they may have them in place, but they would not be able to open them up until they got the approvals. Is that correct?
They went through the approvals. They may require site plan amendment to expand those patios.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor McDougall?
Unfortunately, Madam Mayor, yes, it does. I assume when the emergency orders are rescinded by the province, that will allow the restaurants to have full seating capacity inside, which then I understand. Is that correct, Director Heritage? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Director? Could somebody please turn off their microphone? We're getting back on there. Or is it yours, please, Director Heritage?
No, it's not.
I thought the horses had left the barn.
Right.
Okay, please go ahead.
What was the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question was, I'm assuming that when the provincial, well, we don't know because everything is pivot all the time, but when the province rescinds the emergency order, that means the businesses will be allowed to have full seating inside and full seating on their patio as before, which would mean that seating in the additional patio areas would be extras, and that's why they have to go through the process. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. That may be correct. It depends on what the guidelines are from the province in terms of appropriate social distancing within the restaurant itself. They may not be able to accommodate all the tables that they previously had. But we don't know that at this point in time.
Councillor McDougall?
For Madam Mayor, so at that, 1 sec, thank you. Further, Madam Mayor, so at that point in time, if they have social distancing restraints, we can look at those patio spaces under that lens then, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's something that we could look at, but we could look at it at that point in time, yes.
Thank you, that's all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, and now I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I was already adjourned. Councillor Guido will make that motion.
Thank you. I was waiting for you, Councillor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink. Mr. Clerk, will you call the vote, please?
Voting is open, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown, you might have timed out there, having not voted the last 2 times. Did you want to just verbally give your vote?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay, I'm voting in favour for Councillor Brown, closing the vote, and that's carried 6-0, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. It's some technical issues, but not too many. We're getting used to this. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. Thank you, staff, for excellent reports and answers. Good night, everyone.